Oh yes, my apologies. I can see I was not visible there. So yeah, now I believe everybody can see me. Now I'm visible on the screen. So, like I said, this is a follow-up of the previous debate that we had with Pastor Tshepo. Greetings to everybody once again. Now that you can see me, reperile bakokwane, ne batukulu, ne batswari from Musoni and Pastor. So yes, it is a follow-up from the previous debate with Pastor Tshepo that we had about 2 weeks back, and I made my presentation. So Pastor Tshepo started with his presentation, which basically boiled down to him breaking down his faith, and so he did express that he's not a scholar, so it wasn't much of a debate technically. But so at the end, I made my presentation, and he asked a few questions, and then he ended up falling out. Getting off that never. Yeah, brother Mthoe, welcome to the show. Welcome to Lumeka Avenue. Welcome to Enobra. Feel at home. This is the home of African cultural enlightenment. So we are waiting for. So I was just doing a bit of a introduction, greeting the masses while we wait for our moderator. He is running late currently. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. So you managed to connect. I'm just gonna quickly, basically, I wanna quickly just alert everybody on the social medias so that they can join the show and
no problem.
Come and break bread with us. You know, come break bread. We're breaking bread, you know, the African way. Call all your neighbors. You know how we always did it when we had weddings, we had parties. We didn't need no RSVP. We didn't need no invitation. You were just passing by, and then you heard the noise, and you went inside, you know, and grabbed your plate.
Yeah.
So the type of gathering, you know, we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back like that. So I'm gonna quickly share the link to the people. So you wanna, yeah, and then we'll give the moderator probably about another 5, and then we'll start. We'll start with our discussion of the evening. Let's see who's out there on Facebook. Twitter alerted. Let's go on Facebook. We are live in the building. So you don't have load shedding where you are?
Nope.
Okay, that's good. I'm taking a break of load shedding.
It's actually a good day for this. Although I almost had some flu. I'm currently going through it. So
Oh, is it? Okay. All right. How's my lighting there?
It's looking proper.
Is it fine? Okay.
Yeah, it's better now.
Yeah, because I'm in a hotel, yeah?
Or just make it, if there's a wall in front of you, just make it hit the wall in front of you.
Yeah, the thing is, it's a little torch.
Make it face the wall so that it bounces and become.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's a very small light, so it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, very small, little, tiny light, but at least they can see a little bit, and I think that should be enough. As long as I can see my teeth and my eyes.
Yeah.
That's important right now. The eyes,
especially your teeth, so that you won't say no. I actually say this. No, we saw you speaking.
Exactly. You see, so that's what's important right now. So let me quickly check up on our moderator.
All right.
If we maybe we'll just start while he's coming in. So yeah, as I was saying, this is basically a follow-up from the last debate that we had with Pastor Tshepo about 2 weeks ago. Is the Bible plagiarism of the great BaNTU story? So how do you want to go about it? Do you want me to start with a recap of my presentation? Probably
yes.
I should do a quick, just a quick
rundown so that just in case if I miss something, I get it right now.
Yeah, and perhaps some people were not here; they didn't watch the first one, and then we can give them a bit of a rundown so they can see what's up. It's loading. Yes. I don't know why it's taking this long. I just opened it just before we came in now. I actually opened it. So I don't know why it's downloading again. It's actually downloading from the iCloud. Yeah, but it's about to open up. So I'll do a quick rundown of the presentation. And then we
Anyway, from the moderator.
No, I think I've sent him the link, so I guess he'll, as soon as he is ready, he'll come in. Yeah. So from my side, I haven't seen my presentation as yet. From the display, I don't see it as yet. So tell me, do you see it?
Yes.
Do you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Is it open? Okay. What do you see? You
see great debate. Then start with screenshot.
So on the screen, do you see full screen? I've got no,
Let me try to.
Not the file. It should be the actual presentation open.
Okay. I know. I don't see the actual presentation.
Okay. Let me stop sharing and reshare. I think the same thing last time. Maybe it's the network, but it's gonna work. It's gonna work anyway. Okay. Loading. Okay. If you see a full screen, let me know. It should be on full screen.
For now, I'm only seeing the folder.
You're still only seeing the folder. Yeah, on the other computer, I'm only seeing the folder as well. I wonder why. Perhaps I should get another copy of the same file and re-upload. Try that. Let's see what happens. Okay. Technology. Behave. Let me re-upload it into the folder and see what we get. Okay, hopefully that one will work. Okay. So I still only the folder even now. So it's still only the folder. Do you see anything else or just the folder? Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It's just a folder for now.
Oh, it's still just the folder. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna unshare and reshare again. It's been weird. Okay. Let's see once again. I wonder if it's network here or what is it?
Yeah, it's open now.
Oh yeah, finally. Yeah, okay. Full screen. Okay. Anyway, so there on the first picture, that's me in the land of Kemet, where I was standing in front of the temple of Pharaoh Queen Hatshepsut. And so the question obviously is the Bible plagiarism of the great ancient BaNTU story. So to actually properly define the whole thing, we need to define or put perspective and context to it. We need to define who are the BaNTU, and obviously the BaNTU are a large group of people throughout the continent and outside the continent, of course, but it's a subject for another day. And the main aim will be on the ancient Egyptians, based on their cosmology. Can you see the second slide, or is it still on the first slide? Mthoe, can you see the second slide? Is it on the second slide?
No, I'm still. It's still the first.
Sure. Okay. I think it's still a bit problematic.
Maybe it's the network.
Yeah, it could be. It could be the network. I will stop sharing and reshare. Maybe it will be better again. Do that. Try that one more time. Yeah, it looks like we need to get a better better system that's faster, perhaps. Okay. Sharing. Okay. Okay, maybe let me try the other file. This file is the one I have. Let me share the other one. Perhaps it will come out better.
All right.
Okay. Okay, loading. Yeah, it looks like there's quite a delay. There's quite a delay in displaying. So anyway, I think I will just continue, and then if it does show I think it will show, but I guess people will have to just stick to the voice. Will just be on radio until it actually shows some visuals. Yeah, so the second slide is who are the Bantu, and the focus is the few, and the focus will be ancient Kemet. And for those who want to have a dispute about that, I make a reference my one YouTube video where I demonstrate that the ancient Egyptians call themselves Bantu. And then the next step is the question of antiquity. By the way, if you see the moderator come in, just alert me, please. Because it doesn't make a sound, and I'm on full screen now. I'm not able to see when he joins. So if you do see him,
okay, how do I see?
Let me stop sharing and see. Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but it shows me at the bottom the participants. Yeah, but you can see. Okay, I understand. All right, so let me inform him to let me know on WhatsApp when he comes in, so that I can see, because when I'm sharing, I won't be able to see that he's joined. So I can add him. Okay, let me put it on sound so I can hear his message come in. Back to sharing. We were talking about, we were on the second slide or the first slide. So bear with us, those who have joined. I don't see the comment, anyone in the comment section. I wanted to greet some people. If you're out here, put a comment on the comment section, make a shout out to grandma and granddad and everybody. We're still waiting for the moderator, but we'll just continue anyway. And so I'm sharing my screen. I hope it's gonna load properly this time. Okay. All right. So on the question of antiquity, I think now it's showing the full screen. Bantu texts of ancient Kemet predate the Bible by 2,000 years. The oldest of the texts have been carbon dated 2,400, 2,300 BC. That's almost 5,000 now. Oh no, those are the pyramid texts. And here we have the papyrus, because originally writing began in stone, and then when the ancient Egyptians invented paper, then the first papyruses being written in Kemet. And this one obviously dating back to 1420 BCE. It contains the same text that you find in stone. So this was just a way of having information move around, you can send a letter, then rather it's easy to send a piece of paper than send a tablet, because there was once upon a time they were sending tablets in terms of letter form. And also on the next slide now, the question of antiquity, the age of the Dead Sea Scrolls, carbon dated to about between 200 BCE and 1 CE, 300 BCE, typo there, BCE, oldest by Willard Libby, 1963. And also on the question of antiquity using the Bible, we know that based on the Bible writers themselves, they state that Abraham was born in the Ur of the Chaldees, in the land of his father, of his native, his father Terah in his native land. He died, his brother died before his father, Terah in his native land, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And we know that historically the Chaldeans ruled the area called Ur, because it's called Ur of the Chaldeans because, as I explained previously, because it was an Ur of different people, and this time the Ur took over. It was then called the Ur of the Chaldeans, and this is Genesis 11. So this is generations, more than 4 generations between before Moses, about 900 BCE. That's when roughly Abraham would have been born, if you actually believe he existed. And also on the question of antiquity, in terms of the priesthood, that's the next slide. I don't know, it doesn't look like it's showing us yet. The priesthood of Kemet, we have all the way to the Old Kingdom. We have Imhotep, the high priest of Ra, holding the papyrus scroll, and this dates back to about 2700 BCE. And of course, on the right is your very own high priest, Musoni. Yeah, standing in front of one of the greatest architectural structure. This is the oldest pyramid in the world, which is the Step Pyramid of Saqqara. And then on the next slide, we have the Bantu origins of Immaculate Conception. And this picture showing the origin and then the development to the last stage that we have today. On the right, I have the poem, which is a homage to a Set. So historically, in the world, people used to worship deities based on city. There was no such a thing as an international religion as such. So the first time when someone becomes, or a deity, so to say, becomes worshipped internationally, the first was a Set, who is the mother of Heru, who gave birth to her through Immaculate Conception. And we're going to break that story down. From there, we have then the Black Madonna and Child, which is in the middle. And then much later, when the Romans decided to join Christianity, or whatever, use it, or whatever political term that you wanna, however you want to look at it, then they created the white image, and the one on the right with the poem which was written to a Set. It says it explains the different nations around the world, the names they had given to a Set. The Greeks and the barbarians express your fair name, a name greatly honored among all, but each speaks in his own language, in his own land. The Syrians call you Astarte, Artemis, Nanaya, the Lycian tribes call you Lito, the lady, and so on and so on. There was just one small portion that I had added. And then right after that, we have the Bantu origins of the next step of the definition. The next step is basically the definition of immaculate conception within the context that we are discussing. And here it says, this is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was placed to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. So that's the definition. Why I bring this one is because the Catholics have their own definition, and probably other people might have theirs, and we are not here to discuss those different definitions. We are here to discuss the actual concepts. And then right here we have on the next slide, we have the temple decoration at Dendera depicting Neteru Aset and his sister Nephthys watching over the corpse of their brother Osiris. And then the next slide, this is now where the story actually begins. It begins with Seth murdering his brother. And so one needs to pay attention to the story because you'll start seeing correlations, similarities with stories in the Bible. And so we read from the ancient pyramid text. It says Osiris was put on his side by his brother Seth, but he in netted mood, for his head was raised by the sun, his abomination is sleep, and he hates slackness. Pepu will not decay, he will not rot, and this Pepu will not be encircled by a wrath God. So the last part about Pepu will not decay, he will not rot, that brings in another subject. So what you will see is that within the one story, you find multiple aspects that you find in the Bible, because the last part is basically about immortality, or yeah. So the two brothers on the right, you see on the slide, the one with the portrayed in green is Osiris. Osiris represents the farmers, because the parable, or the mythology, or the parable, whatever, the allegory, whatever word you want to use, it is based on the natural conflict between between our ancestors back in the days, when at one point many of them were pastoral nomads, and then later on many started adopting agriculture, and Osiris representing agriculture, and Seth, you can see him with the shepherd's staff representing the pastoral nomads. And the development of the farmers started infringing on the lives of the pastoral nomads, because it basically oppresses them. I actually have a video here on YouTube explaining the parable, or the metaphor of this enslavement of the Hebrews. So that is explained because it's basically all about how urbanization and the development of agriculture, which brings about the building of cities and expansion and development, starts restricting on the pastoral nomads. And due to that, every group of pastoral nomads who are in close proximity with urbanization tend to leave their culture and adopt pastoral nomadism. I mean, adopt agriculture and settling, because it's more progressive. The ones that have lasted until this day and age, we still have pastoral nomads. If you find them across the continent, those ones isolated themselves and live far from the city, so that they can preserve their culture from being dominated and destroyed by this agricultural urbanization story. So that's where this enslavement thing, as we know that the children of Israel, when famine had to come and everything they needed to be able to survive, they were dependent on the farmers, obviously of ancient Egypt. And so that's and in this story, Seth, the pastoral nomad, kills the farmer Osiris. And so on the next slide, he murders his brother. And as I mentioned, I'm making reference here to the video that I had posted on YouTube, The Enslavement of the Hebrews in Egypt, Bible Allegory Explained. And the pyramid text, there you have it. And the next slide, this is one of the ancient Egyptian text, obviously has been translated by different people, and the current one copy that I have was translated by James P. Allen. And so on Immaculate Conception, I will read only the part that I've underlined. On the next slide, it says, "O Osiris Teti, stand up, raise yourself. Your mother Nut has given birth. Gab has wiped your mouth. The big Inyad shall tend you, having given you your opponent under you. Carry the one great than you," they said against him in your identity of the gross soul shrine. The one greater than you is distinguished, they said, in your identity of the great land. So the part about him raising, stand up and raise yourself. Remember in the previous slide, we showed that he was smitten by his brother, he was laying on the ground. And the next slide, it's still on the Immaculate Conception. This is the build-up. Your sisters, Isis, being a Set, and Nephthys have come to you, making you sound very black in your identity of the great black wall, very green in your identity of the great green. Look, you have become great and round as the great round. Look, you have become encircled and round as the circle that surrounds the eternal isles. Look, you have become round and big as he who surrounds the big waters that perish. And there is the image that I showed with the temple of Dendera, with the two sisters on each side, watching over the deceased body of Osiris. And so the part where in the next slide we have Aset, she conceives the son of the slain Asar. This is in the pyramid text. It says, Isis and Nephthys have guarded for you in Aswit, for they are Lord in you, in your identity of the Lord of Aswit, for they are God in you, in your identity of the God, worshiping you so that you don't become far from them, in your identity of the God beard, gathering you so that you don't become angry, in your identity of the Genderu bark. Your sister Isis has come to you, aroused for love of you. You have put her on your phallus, which is the penis, so that your seed might emerge into her. His sperm might emerge into her, as Sothis and sharp Horus has emerged from you as Horus in Sothis. And that image is shown in the next slide. This is in the temple at Abydos, 1300 BCE. This is a set in the form of a bird. She copulates with the deceased Osiris. So for those who can see the picture, Osiris is laying flat. Obviously, this is the picture on the wall. There's damages, of course, so if you're not able to see it properly, apologies. You can Google, people who have done a remake of the drawing. but I wanted to show the original picture on the wall. So he's laying down, and you will notice on his penis there's a bird on his penis. So why is Isis in the form of a bird, or Set in the form of a bird? So what you find in ancient Kemet, when they portray a spirit or a soul, which is called a Ba, when someone is being deceased, they show a bird with the face of a human being. So a bird represents spirit or soul. So when someone has been deceased, or you portray their soul, you show their body as a bird and their face as a human. So she's in the form of a bird to represent that she is not in the same realm with Osiris physically. He's in the realm of the dead, and she is coming in the form of spirit. So she is in the spiritual world, so to say. And we can see the same analogy in the Bible when the Holy Spirit appears to John the Baptist. We see the Holy Spirit in the form of a bird, a dove, to be specific. And so birds represent spirit, as we know birds fly in the sky. And in the next slide, we have the resurrection of Osiris. In this picture I took in the Valley of the Kings, and this dates to 1600 BCE to 1001 BCE. So you see the body of Osiris rising to the perpendicular at a 45-degree angle. Some geometry happening there. And a lot of Western Freemasons, those who have studied Freemasonry, I know a lot of people have not, especially people that like to talk about Illuminati, have not really studied the text on Freemasons. Freemasonry is African scholarship. It began in Africa, and we have it in the most ruined, or the most smallest ruins that we have within at least Southern Africa. It's when boys are sent to the mountains to be taught. It's a secret society, because the things you're taught about manhood, even though what is done today is quite far-fetched from its purest form due to the destruction of our culture. However, Freemasonry, the Freemasons, you see them, Western Freemasons have copied this posture of Osiris resurrection rising to the perpendicular. And his penis, the perverts that invaded the land have scratched out his penis. It's an erect penis. The erect penis also representing resurrection. The scarab beetle that you see there is rolling the sun. This is Khepera. So anyone that knows the Congo the word for sunset and the word for a person passing away are exactly the same. Take the path of the sun. So, and if you understand that, you know that the sun does not set, or it does not die, rather. You understand it as the sun it manifests itself in another part of the world. And so that's how our ancestors viewed the life of a human being, that you do not die. You transcend, you move to another dimension, you manifest, because the sun currently, excuse me, currently where I am is 20:50 p.m. So the sun outside, it's dark. So The sun is not dead. We don't see its manifest presence, but we know that the sun is still out there. So that's how they understood the life of a human being. Hence, when they in many, obviously in Bantu burials, there are many different methods of burying. There isn't one, but the concept of burying people facing west came from our ancestors. You face west because the sun sets in the west. Face, so she follows the path of the sun. So this concept you find throughout African cosmologies. You find it in amongst the Congo. You find it in ancient Egypt. That's why even when you go to Egypt today, the worship temples are in the East Bank, and all the funerary temples and tombs are in the West Bank because of that whole concept. So what we see here is Khepera is rolling the sun. This is the dung beetle, and the dung itself, the round dung, is now portrayed as the sun. So Khepera represents the sun in the morning. Hence it's called the newness of life, or it represents transformation. So that is the stage of the sun when it rises. So for Osiris, who was dead, now he's rising. That represents the rising of the sun, because Khepera represents the morning, the rising of the sun, the new day. And so when the brothers when we wake up in the morning, the early hours of the morning, different times, you can see the erection for the resurrection. Obviously, the perverts could not stand the spirituality that our ancestors saw in the human body, because they're quite perverted. Our ancestors portrayed breasts to show different parts of divinity, because even those who follow the Bible, the book of Romans tells you that the invisible attributes of God are seen in everything that is created. So it's not about the worship of the sun or worship of erections or whatnot. So that's basically what it represents, the resurrection of Osiris. And this is in the papyrus of Ani, which is the book of coming forth by day, which the grave robbers of Europe called the book of the dead. It says, "Homage to thee, O my father Osiris, thy flesh has suffered no decay." Very important. There were no worms in thee. Thou didst not crumble away. Thou didst not wither away. Thou didst not become corruption and worms. And I myself, I am Khepera. Khepera, what I was explaining, the morning, the sun, the morning sun. The new day sun. I shall possess my flesh forever and ever. I shall not decay. I shall not crumble away. I shall not wither away. I shall not become corruption. I sense some deja vu. I believe everybody else does who's been to church. And here's where the deja vu comes from. The book of Psalms, chapter number 60, it says in verse number 10, "For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption." To see what? Corruption. I shall not become corruption. So that we can see the origins of the text here. The Bantu origins of resurrection continued on the next slide. And here we can see the whole concept of resurrection still being enforced. It says Osiris has awoken because he was dead. God once slept has roused. That God has stood up. God has taken control of his body. This Pepi Neferkari has awoken. So we can see here, he says he has taken control of his body because his body was dead. Pyramid text, 2686 BCE. This is almost 5,000 years ago. And Now, the next slide is the Bantu origins of the Mosaic law. The giver of the law in the Bible was raised in the house of Pharaoh. Very important. The book of Acts, chapter number 7, verse 22. So Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. Watch how the Bible writers link Moses' knowledge of the wisdom of the Egyptians to him being powerful in speech and action. So if Moses was indeed educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, as the Bible states, then he knew the 42 laws of Ma'at that were the constitution of the land of Kemet. Next slide. And so in the next slide, we have Ma'at. Ma'at is portrayed as a Netaru, a female Netaru of truth, righteousness, justice, reciprocity, spreading her wings over the altar. And this is at Louvre Museum in Paris, obviously stolen from the land of Kemet, as many of the artifacts are. And what you see here is the origin of the concept of winged human beings, angels. Started right here in Bantu land. And then in the 42 laws of Ma'at, we have the book of Coming Forth by Day. This has been translated by various people, and this one was translated by E.A. Wallace Budge, Papyrus of Ani. You know, really like a European, Papyrus of Ani, Book of Coming Forth by Day. And so these are some of the next slide here. These are some of the 42 laws. I will not read all of them, but I will go through some of them. It says, "Hail, Strider, coming forth from Anu, I have not done wrong. Hail, embraced with flame, coming forth from Karaba, I have not despoiled, I have not robbed." And the next one says, "I have not slain men," which means I have not murdered. The next one says, "I have not defrauded the offerings. I have not diminished the oblations." And I'm just going to sample through them. And because it's quite a lot, moving on to the next slide. And "I have not desolated plowlands. Hail, Lord of my art. I have not been an eavesdropper." That's people that gossip. In fact, growing up, I used to hear people say gossiping is a sin, but I don't remember seeing it in the Bible. But anyway, it could be there. Yeah, and it says, "I have not defiled the wife of a man. I have," and so it continues. "I have not polluted myself." So there's quite a few. I have not. So this one says, "I have not committed offense. I have not inflamed myself with rage." Like I said, I'm just quickly sampling there because there's quite a few. "And I have not made curses of the king." You know, so I'm sure people can see if Moses grew up being taught these 42 laws, and of which, when you look at them, they have quite a striking resemblance to the Ten Commandments. And of course, obviously, in the Ten Commandments, there are other additional things which don't come from here. But the layout itself, the concept of law, many of them, like "thou shalt not kill," "thou shalt not steal," "thou shalt," they're all in here. Probably with a few exceptions, like the Sabbath day, honoring the Sabbath day, it's not among these ones. But it does make mention of defiling the rituals and all that. And so the next in the next slide we have the Bantu origins of the Lion of Judah. It should be lion, not lions of Judah. And so I submit to you that there is no English. You see, when they say Lion of Judah is actually it's a misconception. It's a bad translation, and I'll tell you why. The Indo-European languages or non-African languages do not have the right word to explain what they were trying to say here, because when it says lion, the concept of Lion of Judah is about the rulership. This is about the throne of David, Jesus being, because Jesus is the Lion of Judah. It's actually the Lion King of Judah. That's the right translation, because there isn't one word. And why I say it's a misconception and a misnomer is the fact that being a lion doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean a ruler. Not every lion is a ruler. Because in a pride, there's one Ingonyama. Or Ingonyama, in Siswati, in isiZulu, Ingonyama. There's only one word. And in Buganda, it's Mpologoma. That is the word for the Lion King, the ruler. So once you say Lion King, there is no one word for it. You can see it's a borrowed concept. Because if it was not, they would have a word for it. They don't have it. And in ancient Kemet, it's Heru and Maket. And the so-called what you see, the picture I took in front of the pyramid and the so-called Sphinx, people call it the Sphinx. That is Heru and Maket. That is Heru, the son of Cyrus, who Isis or Set gave birth to through immaculate conception. He is sitting, this is the head of a human being, and when you look at it from a side view, you'll see the body of a lion with its paws stretched out, because the head of a human being and the body of a lion, it speaks of basically kingship, and those concepts can be only be understood from a Bantu perspective. Bantu origins of the Psalms, the Proverbs, and the Ecclesiastes. And in the prophecy of Nephi, we read, I show you the land is turmoil, the weak-armed is strong-armed. It's talking about things being in reverse. One salute him who saluted, I show you the undermost, uppermost. What is turned on the back turns the belly. Men live in the graveyard. The beggar will gain riches. The beggar will gain riches. The great will rob to live. The poor will eat bread. The slaves will be exalted. Deja vu. If you're feeling deja vu, I'll help you with that. Just go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter number 10, verse 5. Excuse me. Excuse me. Verse 5 to 7. It says, while the rich sit in lowly places, I have seen servants on horses, while princes walk on the ground like servants. You can see same concept. And on the next one, we have a teaching of Amenemep on the origins of the Proverbs. And so we read. It says in the next slide, we have a few examples that I'm going to share. I'm not going to go through every single example, but I've sampled a good few just to and stress out the point, and it says, I pray thee to lend me thy ears, hearken to the things that will be said by me. I pray thee to give thy mind, pay attention to the difficult matters which will be unraveled by me. The setting of them in thine heart will be advantageous to thee. And so in Proverbs 22 verse 17 says, pay attention and turn your ear to the sayings of the wise. Apply your heart to what I teach, for it is pleasing when you keep them in your heart. Basically the same thing, just different translations. And in the teachings of Amenemep, the 16th chapter says, make not the balance to serve either way, through thy falsification of the qued weights, through thy obliteration of the mouths of the measures, i.e. the characters of the stamps on the weights and measures. Proverbs 20 verse 23, diverse ways are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good. Same thing. And also to add, the concept of balance or scales originated in in the land of Kemet. And so in another example, this one is from this is not from the teachings of Amenemep. This is just my typo there. It's the book of Coming Forth by Day. It says, I have not added to the weights. This is one of the 42 laws. It says, I have not added to the weights of the balance. I have not diminished from the weights of the balance. I think the last word has been cut off there. And in the Bible here, we have, you shall not add to the word which I'm commanding you, nor take away from it. It's basically the same. It says, I have not added, I have not diminished or taken away. Diminish and take away, same thing. Just different languages used. And back to the teachings of Amenemep in the next slide. It says here, guard thyself against plundering the poor man, and from treating with harshness the destitute. And in the book of Proverbs 22 verse 22, it says, rob not the poor because it's poor. Same thing. It says, guard yourself from plundering the poor, robbing the poor. Basically the same thing. And another example we have in the teachings of Amenemep, God hates the man who utters frivolous, lying speech. The greatest abomination to him is the man who nourishes enmity in his belly. Proverbs 6:16 says, these 6 things doth the Lord hate, ye 7 are an abomination unto him, a proud look and a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. You can see the lying tongue is an abomination in both texts. Next slide. This one here is the teachings of Mthoe. This one is it's much older than the book of Amenemep. And this one is, it says here in one of the instructions, it says, let a son receive the word of his father, not being heedless to any rule of his. Proverbs 1 verse 8. Listen, my son, to your father's instructions. Same thing. Difference is the other one was written about 2,000 years later. So, okay, that's the end of the slide. And I will stop sharing my screen. And now I will give over to Brother Mthoe to bring on his presentation or questions or both. And And so I mute my mic.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I don't know where to start. It was going to be easier if the moderator was here to help me, move from stage one to another without jumping everywhere. Yeah. But first things first, I want to start controversially with a statement that reason why I'm saying it's controversially, it's because at this point I honestly and genuinely believe if you don't know the world you live in, you don't know anything about it. I think it's important because reason why I think it's important. You can think you know anything or everything in this world, but if it's being applied in a world that doesn't exist at all, you simply don't know anything. So with that statement, I'm starting with that statement just to say, if you don't know the world you live in, or you think you know the world that you've been taught you live in, there's a possibility anything that you think you know is what you've been made to know. Okay, moving away from that now. The topic is the Bible plagiarism of the Great Bantu story. I think before I can say yes or no, I need to know who are the Bantu. Because linguistically, there's a certain number of languages that fall under Bantu. It's not every race out there, even the ones that have mingled with white people or not, or with Arabs or not. It's the languages that speak. That separates. You can hear a hint of a certain language from other people. So there, I first like to clarify that they are Bantu. They are the Pygmies, for example. They are the Nilo. I don't know if they're called the Nile or the Nilo tribes from the Eastern Africa. There, they are the Khois. The Khois, you can never mistaken them for being a Bantu group because of their language, which not even aligns with the Bantu language. So we would say the Bible is a plagiarism of the Great Bantu story, but who are the Bantus? And if we can find them, were they the people that were writing these things in Kemet? That's another question that I would like to throw in. Were they the people writing these things in Kemet? And if they were, what we call the Hebrews or the Hibiru, a part of them as well, are they the same people with the Kemets? Since the Hebrews are the Bantu as well, are they the same people as the Kemet? Or they are different people that stayed in Kemet then, moved out? Where the Bantu people staying in Kemet and their languages can be traced based on how they speak even now, or the Bantu were another group of people? I feel like we are mixing there. Then moving away from that, I don't know if you can take, because there's a lot of questions as well. So I don't know if you can take down the questions that I've sort of asked so that.
All right. I think the best thing is you ask one question at a time. You ask a question, I answer it. You go to the next one. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess at this point I'll start with this question. The Bantu people. Who are the Bantu? Who were the Bantu then? Who are the Bantu now?
All right. Okay, so the concept, when I started with my presentation, I mentioned the definition of the Bantu, but I didn't want to dwell on it because that's a subject on its own. But there are obviously our definitions of Bantu, and there are also Western definitions. There's Bantu as people, and there's Bantu as what the language groups and whatnot. So here's the thing. When you met, for example, you mentioned that the Khoi people are not Bantu. That's as you say, it's a controversial topic, but the people who claim that the Khoi language is not Bantu have not proven it. For example, there are many languages or there are many groups of people which have not been classified as Bantu. And also, it's not like, you see, these concepts don't exist in silos. For example, if you go to East Africa, there are many people who are classified, who speak a Bantu language, but they are Nilotic. Now, I can give various examples. The Kalenjin people of East Africa, they live in areas of Kenya and whatnot. These people are Nilotic, but they also speak the Bantu language. I believe Tutsi people might be also classified as Nilotic, and if I'm not mistaken, and Tutsi people speak a Bantu language, whether they adopted it later or not. But here's the thing. So on answering whether the pastoral nomads and the people of Kemet are the same people, it depends what you mean by the same people. It's not the same culture, because when you say a people, it's a very complex concept, because it depends on how. For example, I have a friend whose father is Hutu and his mother is Tutsi, and he looks like a Tutsi, and because of that, his people or his family sort of isolate him in a way and say you look like the Tutsis. So the question is, does he identify as in a society where you take your father's identity? Like I've always explained, that it's taking your father's identity is not a biological or a scientific concept. You are both your parents equally, because they contribute 50% in this biology to your chromosomes. So it depends on a society. When you go to, for example, the Balobedu people, the rain queens, their paternity is not important. What is important to if a child is born, a daughter especially, is born of a rain queen, her father's identity is unimportant. She identifies herself based on her mother, because that's important for her destiny in terms of the administration. She needs to become the next queen. So she counts the lineage based on her mother. So when you say same people, it depends what you mean. Do you mean biologically? Because I've always explained that when a people live together for a long period of time, there's something called interbreeding, you know. It's also like, I can give an example with my people. You hear a lot of Tsonga people saying, I'm not Shangan, I'm Tsonga, right? It's very common that you find in South Africa. I used to hold the same concept, but I've come to understand that it's a very, very limited way of thinking, because the Ndwandues, when they moved into Tsonga land and conquered the Tsonga people, they conquered them in terms of territorially, but the Tsonga people absorbed them culturally. The Ndwandues who left KZN and lived among the Tsongas, they don't speak the language they were speaking in KZN. They speak our language, Tsonga. So, and they've been living with us for 200 years. So how do you separate them from among us after 200 years of living together? we all are. Hence, I end up saying that you can't separate that one is Shanga and one is Tsonga, because we've come to live together. So to answer you on, so that's the biological part of identity, where people choose which side of, whether you take your mother's identity or your father's identity. And spiritually also, in terms of cultural spiritual systems, one can get a spiritual calling in African setting, can get an ancestral calling from your mother's side. So in terms of African culture, it's never been always been about taking your father's surnames. We did not have surnames in antiquity. They were brought by Europeans. So it's a political concept when you say I am Ngwenya because my father is Ngwenya, and those kind of things. And it's for administration and things like that, because you can imagine what your ID would look like if you had all these names of all your ancestors. You know what I'm saying? So, but in terms of culture, the difference between the people of Kemet and the Habiru lived together, definitely. But the difference is in the culture is that the ancient Egyptians were at war with the pastoral nomads. If you look at the story, whether it's in the Bible, because I did not go into the Bible concept of the same story of Asa and Osiris and Seth, where the shepherd kills the farmer in the Bible. And so the Habiru, when they saw that story, they were hurt and decided, because in the story, who gets chosen is that Osiris gives birth to a son, and his son becomes the ruler of the kingdoms of the land of Kemet. So every pharaoh represented Heru in the life and Osiris in death. So when you go through the whole judgment, I did not show the slide of when a person passes on, they go through this judgment scene where their heart gets weighed against the feather of Ma'at, which represents the law of Ma'at. And then eventually, if that judgment, you are judged righteous, so through that judgment, you recite the 42 laws of Ma'at, you state your own independence, you judge yourself, and then you become Osiris if you indeed pass the judgment. So when the Habiru read that story, I'm finishing it up. So when the Habiru read the story, they decided to write a version in reverse, where in their story, the one who gets chosen is the shepherd. And hence in the story, you have Abel being chosen over the farmer whose offering is rejected, who is Cain. And then Adam gives birth to a son and calls his name Seth. Who is Seth? Seth is Osiris' brother, the shepherd. And therefore Seth in the Bible becomes the progenitor of the shepherd, who is going to bring you the great shepherd. And so the Lord is my shepherd. So the two cultures, so the conflict in the two stories, they are called brothers. So yes, they are brothers, but culturally, spiritually, they are not of the same culture, because the Bible is a glorification of pastoral nomadic culture, and then Kemet is a glorification of the farmer, urban developer, and the person that, you know. So the separation of the two is that the two cultures are in conflict, and the one obviously developed and the other copied. And that's why even in the Bible you can see the progression also. You'll see that in the Bible, the pastoral nomads, it starts with the Israelites as pastoral nomads, and they progressively become settlers. That's why the final chapter is them settling in the land, the so-called promised land. The first time they have their own land, where they do what in that land? They farm, they settle. And then they want kings, because kingships are things which are invented by farmers, because settlers, they build and they civilization. So they later then have kings, because they desired the things, because they were seeing how the urbanization was quite a convenient concept. So they wanted to be part of that. And so Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yahweh told Samuel that they have rejected me, because pastoral nomads did not invent kingship. So you can see that they slowly adapt to the culture of Cyrus, which is basically what they were trying to avoid in that whole concept. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, yeah, it does a bit. So okay, let me just do my own present my own research that I came across, that I had to go through. So obviously the first part was to find out if the Bantu were Abantu, it just represented anybody out there, as in any human being, since we call a human being umuntu. So I had to first find out if it was referring to just anybody, so that when we say it's the Bantu story, we're just saying it's the story of the people, black people, obviously, because that was the only race that was there. It's the story of the black people that was in Africa before the Bible writers wrote the story, or Bantu people were a certain group of people, not just anybody. So to go further, obviously, I'm going to be referring to the Bible most of my things, because it's the book that I take. I think it holds so much authority and truth. I'll explain why I believe that. So in the old times, people were called whatever they were called based on their fathers. For example, Cush. We call Cush right now. I don't know if there's any book that's older than the Bible that mentions Cush. I don't know about the Egyptian writings, if they mention Cush. I don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't, né? But the Bible does mention Cush, and we have people that call themselves Cushites, né? The Bible does mention Canaan. We got people that call themselves Canaanites. The Bible does mention Mitzrayim, which Egypt was called, and these people were brothers. So all these nations back in the day, they called themselves through their fathers' names. They gave honor to their fathers and built cities, and named those cities in their fathers' names. As the pastor touched on, I think he touched on it last time, that after the flood, people were one first. They all had an understanding of God, obviously, because they have one great grandfather. If he was to tell everybody a story, he was going to tell them the same story. But along the way, it's human nature to just go against what they're being told, or go against the law, or go against the norms that they are being taught, in this case by their grandfather, their great-grandfather, who was Noah. So along the way, people started coming up with their own concepts of who God is. But before I get to that, I had to ask a few people that I believe are really culturally, rooted. So the first one was Ndebele from Zim. The second one was Muluba or Luba from DRC. And the third one was Yoruba from Nigeria. And the fourth one was Igbo from Nigeria. So my question to them was, now that ancient Egypt is exposed to all of us as Africans, we know it's in Africa, we know it was black people's land, and all those things were built by black people. Have they came to sort of noticing few things that belong to ancient Egypt in their own culture? Is there a few things that they are aligning to ancient Egypt that they can say, oh, we do this, it was being done in Egypt. Oh, this symbol, because symbols hold a lot of message in them. They hold message and messages. So are there things in your culture that you can relate or point out, no, this is from ancient Egypt, we truly are, You know, we truly are the ancient Egyptians. So this was three people from different races that are culturally rooted: Ndebele, Muluba, Yoruba, and Igbo. And they all say there is nothing that links them to Kemets. You know, even to the signs and their one-eyed symbols, even the meaning of those one eyes and stuff. There is nothing. Ne? So they don't consider themselves as close to that. Then that's my I would say, because I didn't use any book here, I just asked. So that was my first I'll call it witness. My second witness when I go to biblically, the Israelites were not Egyptians because they were separated from Egyptians, you know. And while they were in Egypt, they stayed at a certain place that so Joseph had sort of for them, that had asked the Pharaoh for them to stay there. So they were separated from there. And remember, okay, let me not jump into that. And they served their God irregardless of the Egyptian laws. Secondly, Moses once ruled in Cush and married there, but never slept with a woman from the Cushite Empire, respecting the laws of their fathers. So that's another sign that Israelites tried to keep themselves separate from other races. You know, if you can call racism in the ancient times, if we can bring up the topic of racism in the ancient times, you'll find out that Israel was the only race that made itself look better than any, you know, because it served the God that told them they are better than any, and sort of showed himself that they are better than any throughout the Old Testament. So moving on, Moses didn't sleep with the woman from Cush. Then, yeah, for intermarriage rules that obstructed that didn't align with that. Then the second reference is the book of Joshua. Going back, sorry. The reference for Moses not sleeping with a Cushite woman is on the book of Joshua. You know, before going back to lead Israel out of Egypt. So they were not Cushites either, because Moses didn't sleep with a Cushite woman for those reasons. They were not Cushites either. No, they were Canaanites, because they went to get the land from the Canaanites. They took the Canaanites' land. So they were not Canaanites either. They were not Egyptians, they were not Cushites, they were not Canaanites. So I'm using the Bible now to separate them from Kemet. Then moving on, the Egyptians were known to Canaanites as Cushite, to Canaanites and Cushites as Misr or Misraim, because biblically they were descendants of their forefather who was Canaan and Cush's brother, Misraim. All of these races are known as the Hamites, the descendants of Ham, who is also mentioned in the Bible. I'd also like to bring into the picture that I don't know if Egyptian writings honor their forefather, or their forefather isn't mentioned, it only mentioned the gods, you know. Moving on from that, since they are not the first race, so they probably have a forefather or someone they who says someone came here and built first. They should have those kind of people. So I don't know if their writings give credit to those people, or they just skip that. It's unnecessary. But if they were to give credit, then Ham, their great-grandfather or their grandfather, will be mentioned in their writings. The same Ham was mentioned in the Bible. Okay. They are known for ancient civilizations, but also ancient civilizations had started already when the world was still one. When they were still one, every nation, every tongue was still one, and they were in Babylon. They were led. The first civilization was Babylon. Sorry, yeah. And then they moved when the Babylon was brought down, and the languages were confused. They had to move to Egypt. They had to move to that place. The Cushites had remained in their own place. Now, if I went through some some files regarding the city of Babylon. From the Bible, the city of Babylon, I think it's the book of Joshua as well, was in the city of, in the east of Shinar. Sorry. Was the city of Babylon was in the east of Shinar. In Sudan, there's a place called Sinai in Sudan. On top of that, in Sudan, there are pyramids as well. So I don't know if Sudan was part of the, what do you call it, the Upper Egypt, but and I don't know which one is older between the pyramids in Sudan and the pyramids in Egypt. But apparently, the Babel city that was sort of swallowed up by 1/3 of it was swallowed up by the waters. In the Arab myth and the Arab myth stories, there is a story that the space between Africa, the Horn of Africa, and the Middle East, there was a big earthquake that happened there, and it swallowed a lot of people, and it was a place of weeping. That story is a myth that's not based on biblical values or facts, but if you look at it, it aligns with the fact that Babylon was in the east of Shinar. That Horn of Africa is in the east of Shinar, the one that's in Sudan right now. So Babylon was in Africa. Babylon was an empire built by the Kushites, or the descendants of Kush, before the breaking down of the languages, the confusion of the languages and all that. Moving on, I'm trying not to go out of, I don't know how to put it. I'm trying not to go further away from the topic. I'm really trying. Yeah. Then the questions.
Okay. Can I what's this, disturb you right there? Because
yes,
you've I won't be able to to respond because I think maybe in terms of your questions, you can shorten them so that I can respond to them accordingly, because I will forget if you continue. So before you continue, I just want to quickly address some of the things you said. Okay. The first one is you mentioned that you've spoken to people in the Igbo and Zimbabwe, right? And
yes.
So yeah, we didn't do an introduction. Where are you from? Just let the people know.
I'm from Zim. I'm from Zim.
What's your ethnicity?
I'm Ndebele.
Okay. Yeah. So do you know the Kami ruins? Do you know
Sorry,
the
I didn't get that.
Do you know the Kami ruins in Bulawayo? You're from Bulawayo, right?
Yes. Yes.
Do you know the Kami ruins in Bulawayo?
Yes.
You know that. Do you know who built those ruins, and you know who built them?
The Kami ruins.
Yes. You know who built them?
No.
Okay. All right. The reason why I ask you is, okay, so the Kami ruins were built by the Torah dynasty, right? They came out of the Great Zimbabwe Empire. The reason why I ask you this is just to show you that just because a person comes from a specific place does not make them an authority of the history of the area. You can take me to Egypt and find me the first 10 people on the streets in Egypt. They probably don't know as much as I know about ancient Egypt. In fact, especially these Arabs that live there, they don't know anything. That's why we argue with them on we debate with them on social media. They don't know anything about ancient Egypt. They lived it, they wondered. So the methodology when you verify information, right? In fact, you bring me to an account where there is a book. There are certain scholars who've done a mistake of actually going to what is it? Hold on, I was trying to come this side. Okay, hold on. Yeah. So these guys, they went. There's a scholar who went to the Dogon people, right? And he wrote a book called the Pale Fox. And he's got two sections of the book. Well, not two sections, but he's got earlier work and later work. When he started out with laymen. So basically, the Dogon are like they live like ancient African traditions, the way it was built. And so when you come in, they don't give you information. They are the most stingy people with information are Africans that have isolated themselves to preserve their culture. So later in the years, after this guy started living amongst those people, he built a dam among them. The French, he was French, a white man from France. When the French invaded the area, he fought with them. So after probably more than a decade, they tested his character and found out that he was actually not just about getting stuff from them and leaving. They realized he was committed. Only then they started giving him information. That was the inner information. This is information. If you go to a Zulu person today, right, they're not gonna. It's in fact, I should cut that story. Most Zulu, if you go to a common Zulu person, they think the Zulu nation was always this large, right? They don't know that Shaka actually made the Zulu nation as it is today. Before that, it was the Zulu clan. The Mthetwas were not part of the Zulu clan. The Mkwananizis were not part of the Zulu kingdom prior to Shaka. A lot of them don't know. You go and ask a common Zulu person. So a person, just because they come from a culture, does not make them an expert on the culture. So the guy who says, yeah, Igbos, there's nothing related to ancient Egypt. Number one, the guy probably doesn't know anything about ancient Egypt. He doesn't. What has he studied? You get what I'm saying? Does he even know, for example, when you say there are many people, I've debated with a lot of people, even on Twitter, who claim that, yeah, there's no connection between West Africa and ancient Egypt. It's a lie. There is adequate evidence, but these people don't study anything. They don't read, they don't travel, they don't do anything. All they do is sit, watch TV, go on social media, and get emotional about information. There is plenty of evidence to link what's this, which you said, Igbo, Debele, and what else? Let me unmute your mic. Okay, you need to unmute your own mic quickly. What is the other one?
So it's Igbo, it's Yoruba, it's Muluba.
Oh, it's Muluba. You know what's the funny thing? The Chiluba language is, I follow a linguist who does comparisons between Bantu and ancient Egyptian. And his chosen language to show the correlations is actually Chiluba. But how would someone be able to do that? You can't do that just because you are a Luba. You have to be trained in linguistics. What was this guy comparing? What does he know about ancient Egypt? What has he read? The only thing most people know about ancient Egypt, probably himself, is that the pictures that they see or all around, and a lot of them can't even read what's written on the wall. They just see pictures. You get what I'm saying? So that's the one thing. Just because a person comes from a place, I can prove that multiple times. You can take me to even Ndebele. What is the word for a king in Ndebele? Is it not also in Ngonyama?
A king is in course. But
Okay.
the word Ngonyama exists.
They don't have the word for
in our language.
It exists.
Sorry?
Okay. There you go. And then
Yes.
the king was a lion, the lion king, ancient Egypt, as a link. Another thing, do the Ndebele kings not wear leopard skin?
They do.
That's another link to ancient Egypt. I can give multiple examples. Now, in ancient, the oldest depiction of the wearing of the leopard skin is ancient Egypt. And that's a topic also of another day, that the leopard skin represents a priesthood. So the king who wears leopard skin also stands in the office of the priest, because he speaks. When he speaks, he represents God. So there are many. So the people who say that there are no links, they don't know these things that I'm telling you about. So that's the one thing. And
so
then I think the second, yeah.
To point out what I assume they would know about ancient Egypt, I assume that everybody, when you ask them, is your religion or your culture linked to ancient Egypt? The only thing that most people who haven't studied would point to is God, the idea of God, the idea of one. No, I mean someone who hasn't studied. If you were to ask someone who hasn't studied, what do you know about Egypt? The legally we should know about Egypt is their gods, right? A lot of people would know that they are gods. Sorry?
Gods, what do you mean? God and gods, as in there are many gods.
Okay, so I don't know what's the difference between Ma'at and Amit or Anubis, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what's the difference between Mahat and Osiris, or all those other names. I don't know what the difference is.
Okay, let me.
If some are gods, yeah. So I'm assuming that if anyone is to know something about Egypt, you would know that there are gods in Egypt. You know, there is a god and gods. I don't know how you explain it. Yeah.
No, there are no God and gods and God. No. And this misconception comes also from Egyptologists. Like I said in the initial debate, the first translators of ancient Egyptian texts were Christians. So they came with their biases. So when they translated the word Neteru, they said gods or God and whatnot. You don't see the word Neterus, but they will write gods for the word Neteru. So I'm not gonna, because it's also a very complex topic on its own. So I'm gonna simplify it by using for so-called, let's assume the God's part. Let's assume it's true, right? To show that it's a fallacy, we're gonna assume it's true. So I mentioned the 4 moments of the sun, which is a Conga cosmology, which speaks of the path a human being takes. They take the path of the sun. When a child is born, the sun is rising. So that is called Kepera. It's the sun. Kepera is the sun. At noonday, when the sun is at its highest, it's Ra. That's the sun, right? But there's Kepera and there's Ra. Sun. And then you have at night, like right now, where the sun is not visible, you have Amen. you have Osiris, right? Horus and Ra are also the sun. So if somebody says that these are many gods, they've concluded in their mind that the ancient Egyptians thought there were many suns.
Is Ma'at included there?
No, wait, no. We're not gonna go into Ma'at. Like I said, I'm gonna use these as an example just to, because like I said, this concept of gods is a very complex thing. They looked at it and said it's many gods. An example is if someone comes out of has never heard of Christianity and says, okay, there's God the Father, there's God the Son, right? They will say, oh, okay, so Christians have a few gods, like 2, or the Holy Spirit you can add, might be by Oxalayo. They can say some might read 2 gods, some might read 3 as the Holy Spirit. But a Christian will say, no, you don't understand. It's the one thing. You get what I'm saying? So, and God, you see, the Bible says God is a consuming fire, right? Your God is a lamb. Your God is a lion. In the book of Psalms, it says our God is a sun and shield. So someone can interpret that as many gods, but a Christian will quickly correct you and say, no, these are the many manifestations of the one God. So that's exactly what I'm showing you. The manifestations of God started in ancient Egypt. If someone says there are 4, that Khepera, Horus, Osiris, Amen, and all of these are different gods, they are saying there are many suns. Why would the ancient Egyptians, who are brilliant scientists, and their science has been proven to be beyond modern scientific understanding, why would they think that the sun which comes out in the morning is a different sun to the sun in the noon? They knew it's the same sun. But these are called attributes of God. And attributes of God come with different names, just like you have El Shaddai's, you will say, no, God has many names. You get what I'm saying? So there is so this polytheism stuff about ancient Egypt is a misnomer. It's people who don't understand the culture. They don't understand it. And they've never put their mind to it, because it's not that complicated. Because if you say that Khepera and Ra are 2 gods, you're saying there are 2 suns in the universe, which is ridiculous. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I would like to. Yeah, I understand that on this part you were touching on one of the things that I had said, right? Especially the ones where I asked the different kind of people if their culture aligns with the ancient Egypt. So moving on, I had the one where I had asked if in the ancient writings of Egypt, do they give credit to their forefathers? Are they mentioned? And the life of their forefathers, is it mentioned? And if it is, who are they and where did they come from?
In all written human records in the world, no one writes about their ancestors like ancient Egyptians. They invented genealogy. I probably would waste time if I would add a slide, but if you go to the temple in Abydos, Pharaoh Seti I, I think it's Abydos or Dendera. These two temples I tend to mix them up sometimes. But yeah, when you go to the temple there, Seti I, he documents the genealogy of the pharaohs from the as Pharaoh all the way to himself in genealogical order. So, and that is the oldest documented genealogy that you can find in the world. It's basically that. So, in terms of Ham, when Egyptologists dig up a new grave today, they'll tell you who's lying in there. It's documented. It's marked, and there's the history of it. So, yes.
Okay, so reason why I'm asking that, I know there can be some some history, but my question exactly is the mention of Ham, the mention of Mizraim, the mention of the brothers of Mizraim. If on those writings, are they mentioned, or just like any other race? Because what separates the Bible from Egyptian writings, Greek writings, and what? Most of the writings you'll note that the writers will focus on themselves and wouldn't give you any history about anyone else. Like if you want to go further, then it's either they would tell you, no, we were here first, they came from us. Okay, but like that's the end. Because if they tell you we were here first, everyone came from us, then they have no reason to tell you about anyone else. So in those times, my question, in those times where the Egyptians, the only people there, or they were people elsewhere, and they also came from somewhere, and they also document, we came from these people. These are the names, like for example, as I mentioned on the Bible, Mizraim is mentioned as the forefather of Misr or Egypt, and his brothers are also mentioned, and what they did is also mentioned, and it gets mentioned way before Israel stands as a nation, So what I'm trying to understand is, does the writings state, their forefathers and the life before what they had going on there in Egypt, and who that life was lived with, the earth before them, the life before them? Do they have that documented in their books? Because personally, when I went through the search of Egypt, I didn't really go deep on Egypt. When I found out that I was on a search for our value as Black people, that was the first thing I started. Why are we looked down on? Like, what's the motive? What's the agenda? And even if we are this little, why the continuation of us being looked down at all these years? I mean, if we got to the point whereby we're looking down at ourselves, on our own, if we have been conquered to that extent mentally, why the continuation? Like, haven't all these people benefited what they were benefiting? Our politicians are already saving them. Our religion, because I had stood neutral at that point. Our religion is already mimicking them. I mean, why the continuation of all this? And along the way, I found out that the only thing that you can stand up and get pride and find some sort of worth, value, and pride from, that has been left behind. It wasn't left in the open. There's some hindrances like to stop you from getting there. But if you look at it, you can breach that hindrance and you'll find out that no, this is the only thing we've been left with. The only thing we've been left with to know as our history is Egypt. That's the only thing. And if you are someone who says, fine, I understand this is our history, this is our value, we were the first people, now I want to go beyond Egypt, you can't. You see, you can't go beyond Egypt. You are stuck there. But life didn't begin there. Now, the only book that took me, that's the other reason why I didn't go further with knowing Egypt. I felt like this is just it's just carrots, something to hold on to, because honestly speaking, I don't know what are people implementing, what people are getting from ancient Egypt and they're implementing in their lives that they already don't get in the Bible. I don't know. I'm not judging it. I'm not making it look down, but I don't know what people, because they say your history is like a map. It determines where you're coming from, so you can know where you're supposed to go. So after knowing that we come from Egypt, I didn't see where else. Now where to? That's when I felt like there's no time for me to spend more time knowing about this. I had to move further. And for me to go beyond, I couldn't go beyond using those writings. The Bible is the only thing that took me beyond Egypt. Then I had to find out, okay, I believe that Egypt, the way it's been left for us to find, yes, there are people that try to say Egypt was white people, but that's a clean lie. I mean, it's not for people that are actually looking for knowledge. People that are looking for knowledge can't spend time debating on whether Egyptians were black or white. That's too much. It's a stupid debate, But irregardless, there are people that have been left to throw that at you when you try to find yourself and you find out that, oh, Egyptians were black. There are people still left behind to throw that at you and say Egypt was for white people. But that's the legal hindrance you'll get, to finding more about Egypt. Besides that, it's the only thing that all black people, that's where the other problem is. All black people have been left to find some sense of value and sense of worth from, of which, as Egypt was living, Cushites were living. The descendants of Cush were existing. They were not in Egypt. They were in their own place. As Egypt was striving, the sons of Canaan were striving. No, I wouldn't say they were striving because they didn't get to that level, of being that big. But if you look, biblically speaking, Jerusalem was a valued city, a golden city, a city that was kind of like made. It was praised for its beauty. Those were the Canaanites' work. But Africans can't say, my ancestors were Canaanites. They built this. No. All the Africans, whenever they want to go back to their history and find a sense of value, they meet at one place, Egypt. Even though some of them, their ancestors weren't even there, all of us are sent to that place. That's where I found a problem with Egypt. So, moving on from there, that's why I was asking if Egypt itself, the writings, took note of other people that was around it, like from the brothers
okay.
of
Yeah, sorry to cut you there. Can I just quickly respond to
of Mr. Canaan?
I think you've muted your mic or something. All right, you were breaking there. All right, just to quickly respond to, just to realign also that we actually talking about. We are talking about which one is the origin. The Bible copied from ancient Egypt. That's the debate. So, but to bring it to the fact of, because you said a lot of things. You mentioned that Mizraim and all those people. Straight to the point, those characters are mythological. And number two, because no one can prove that there was such a person called Noah or Mizraim and all those things. And in fact, when Egyptology started, these Christians that went and plundered the land of Kemet, they were looking for the proof about biblical patriarchs like Joseph and all the way to Moses. And 200 years later, they found nothing because these people never lived in ancient Egypt. So these were just these names. These people are mythological characters. You must also remember that Abraham, if Abraham existed, he would have been born only 900 BCE. This is when the ancient Egyptian civilization was already about 2,000 years old. You get get what I'm saying? That is towards the end of the civilization. And when you say that there's nothing beyond Egypt, that's a fallacy, because there are two fallacies. There is the other one is this idea that we are only focusing on ancient Egypt. There is no one who understands ancient Egypt who only looks at ancient Egypt. You can never understand ancient Egypt just by looking. That's why Europeans were trying to interpret, they were looking for something else, because number one, to understand which language, for example, linguistically, to understand what language is ancient Egyptian, which it falls under. You have to go to another culture. You have to compare it with another living language. You get what I'm saying? So with that's the thing about history. For example, like you cannot study Zulu history and not go to Malawi. You will be limited. You will not be able to understand Zulu culture and history and its people if you don't go to Malawi, you don't go to Zambia. You will be limited. Just stack there in KZN and you think you're studying Zulu people. You can never study any culture or history from that perspective. That's why people who truly study ancient Egypt, like we do, we are the ones who understand many other cultural elements that are found. For example, you go to in Zalwelanga, in Mpumalanga, right? There's you from Zimbabwe. The bird that you see, the Zimbabwean bird, you've got the Zimbabwean bird, you've got the conical tower, right? When you just sit there in Great Zimbabwe, have you been to Masvingo? Great Zimbabwe Monument. I don't know if you've been, but so when I went there and I looked at the conical tower, you know what I linked? You know what I've linked it to? I've linked it to the Tekenu in ancient Egypt. Same concept. I've linked it to, well, the Tekenu in Ethiopia when I went to the city of Aksum. You get what I'm saying? So you cannot study anything from just saying we're just looking at Egypt. It's impossible. You can never understand Egypt if you don't. And therefore, people, when you study, if you want to understand any group in Africa, you have to go beyond the region of the people that you're looking at. You can't go to Kenya and say, I'm studying the Maasai people only in Kenya. You're not going to get anything, because the Maasai people have been migrating. Where did they come from? The Tutsi people. You can't go to Rwanda and say, I'm studying Tutsi people. Tutsi people have migrated from where? They've got a long migration to come all the way from Northeast Africa. So, so the idea that people just look at Egypt, you cannot understand anything that you're studying without looking at everything holistically. So even the people you mentioned, and they say there's no link between ancient Egypt and their own culture. They don't know their own culture because they probably don't know ancient Egypt. For you to, it's like what I explained, right? The thing about the sun, you won't find a Zulu person that can explain it to you better than I have. And I'm not Zulu, and no one has explained it to me. How did I come to it? Is when I conceptualized, I was looking at, in fact, when it came to me, I was looking at how the Congo cosmogram of how the human being takes the path of the sun. And so it came to me that in Zulu, you say, and when I say it to Zulu people, they go, "Boo, wow, really? Yeah, that actually makes sense." You get what I'm saying? So the study, it links you to the holistic existence of the culture. So and also when you when you study ancient Egypt, like we know that before you had the pharaohs, you had Nepta, which became the stone calendar of Nepta, which it became the basis of their spiritual systems, because they were studying the path of the sun through Nepta player. Guess what? Because I've been to Inzalwe, Nepta player is a child of Inzalwe. Inzalwe is the oldest stone calendar in the world. So when you say that you can't go beyond Egypt, that's just not possible. The oldest mathematical instrument found in the world is in the same region where you find Inzalwe, which is called the Libombo bone, a very complex mathematical instrument. At Inzalwe, you've got a stone carved like the Horus bird. There are stones. There were 3 stones in Inzalwe, which the people who have studied the area claim that it aligned to the stars, the Orion constellation, which the 3 pyramids of ancient Egypt are. So the whole thing about origins.
1 minute.
All right. Okay.
30 seconds.
No problem. So the whole thing about it coming from, I just want to quickly okay, so the whole thing about us not being able to go beyond Egypt or ancient Egypt is not really possible. It doesn't make any sense, because when you study a thing, when you truly study anything, it takes you beyond itself. Because when I ended up with this topic, how did I end up with this topic? Is I was studying the Bible, and unlike many people who probably want to make comparisons to try and debunk the Bible, I was actually studying to know more about the Bible. And when I studied the Bible even more, it kicked me out of church. The one thing that kicked me out of church was the Bible. When I studied it, I came to a conclusion that the writings of Paul and all of them do not align with the book of Jeremiah, when he says the new covenant will be written in your heart, and you will not need any man to teach you, for God will teach you. So it didn't make sense for me. Why would there would be all these gifts of the teacher and all that stuff? It just doesn't align with Jeremiah. So that kicked me out of church in 2015. You get what I'm saying? So, but then, so it was me studying the Bible. So anything that you truly study will take you to its origin. You get what I'm saying? So if you study a person, it will take you to their origin. So everything will take you to its origin. So what I really want to emphasize now is the whole concept of the story in the Bible, Mizraim, the story of Adam, the many characters. Yes, you mentioned that the Bible mentions all these places like Cush. Those names are there in ancient Egyptian texts, obviously, because the pharaohs made many campaigns to the area, to Cush, to places like the land of Punt in Ethiopia, in Somalia, So even the term Cush is found. I think Pharaoh Mthoe also makes mention. And even the whole even within Cush, I know that the Eurocentric Egyptologists like to group Cush as if it was just one group of people. But in ancient Egyptian texts, you've got the different groups of Cushites. There are people like the Wawat and things like that. So we have that in detail. There are a group of Cushites who were friendly with the ancient Egyptians, and we had a group of Cushites who were hostile with the ancient Egyptians. So, and then, for example, you've got the Magi warriors who were the warrior, the army of the pharaohs, I think, around the Middle Kingdom. These were Cushites, and these today there are people like the Kalenjin people who are linked to these groups that live there. So names like so a text, for example, like the Bible mentioning actual names does not prove that it's history. So, for example, the Greeks have a character in Greek mythology. You have a character called Memnon, right? And he's called the king of Ethiopia. Does Ethiopia exist? Yes. Is there such a person called the king of Ethiopia? Yes. Was there a person called Memnon in history? No. He's a mythological character. So you must understand that myth, when you write a mythological story, you use real places like the Da Vinci Code. When you watch the movie, it makes mention of various historical accounts, like the Knights Templars. It's mentioned in the Da Vinci Code. The Council of Nicaea, there were 7 ecumenical councils, and the Council of Nicaea is one of them. It's mentioned in the Da Vinci Code. That's why, in fact, the Da Vinci Code is the reason why most people even know about the Council of Nicaea. They only know about the Council of Nicaea. They don't know about the other 6. And the reason they don't know is because they don't know. They only picked up the Council of Nicaea through a movie, which is mythological. Unless someone actually thinks that, if you think that the Da Vinci Code is true, that means that Jesus has a daughter somewhere, has a bloodline, he had a child. So if you say that the Da Vinci Code is mythological, someone might use the argument that, well, it mentions some historical or some actual places and actual historical. I mean, the Bible does mention even Pharaoh Tahaka of the 25th dynasty. It does not mean that the actual story is true, I could write a story, the Lion King. Lions exist. Doesn't mean the Lion King story is an actual event, a historical event. It's a story, it's myth. But at the end of the day, the myth will always use actual stories, actual places. When you write a play, you're not gonna even a movie like Black Panther. When it starts, it shows you the continent of Africa. It goes to a certain place, it doesn't create its own continent. You know what I'm saying? And so even so now when you talk about origins and things like that, the ancient Egyptians have written a lot about things that came prior. We know that the ancient Egyptians came from the south. We mention it in their text. And everyone talks about Atlantis. Where did they learn about Atlantis? That there was a place called Atlantis. The ancient Egyptian is an ancient Egyptian priest who actually mentions that place to a Greek. Atlantis is a place that you once used to be. So the idea that ancient Egyptians were talking about themselves and not about other people is not true. They wrote a lot about the Habiru. So yeah, I mean.
So just to ask then on what you just mentioned, is Moses mentioned in their writings?
Nope. No. There's
So
no Moses.
There's
no Joseph. There's no Jacob. None of them. Yeah.
Okay. So is it fair to say Moses, like for you, in your case, is it fair to say Moses lived in Egypt? He probably knew the laws.
No, Moses, there is no evidence that Moses existed. In my presentation, I was saying that if Moses existed, he would have lived in the land of Pharaoh, in the house of Pharaoh, and would have known. It's a hypothetical. It's when if it's like if someone accuses you of, let's say someone says I broke into their house, and I'll say, okay, fine, let's assume that's true, but give me the date. So I broke in on this date, and I'm like, but Your Honor, I was in Dubai on the 25th of February. How did I break into his house? You get what I'm saying? So that's why I was showing that if indeed Moses had existed, it means he would have lived in the land of Egypt, and he would have known the laws of Ma'at, which existed 2,000 years prior to him. So there is no evidence. There is no evidence of Noah. There's no evidence of any of those.
So to go back again to the topic, I know I really needed the moderator for this, man. But I hope I'm not straying too much. Yeah. So the Bible being a myth, I want us to be able to pick out, since it's a copied story from the Bantu story, which part of it is a myth and which part of it is true. Are there parts that are a myth because they are also a myth in Egypt, or all the parts that are a myth about it, they are totally a myth, but those parts that are a myth are not found in the Bantu story or the Egyptian story?
Okay. All right. So one thing we have to bear in mind and understand is the fact that the word myth does not equate to a lie. So the word mythology is like when the best example you can give Christians of the word myth is the word parable. So back in my super Christian days, I've had debates I used to enjoy debating with Jehovah's Witnesses because a lot of people would avoid them. So I wanted to debate with them because, quite frankly, the Bible says iron sharpens iron, and when two bars of irons are moving in the same direction, they cannot sharpen each other. They have to oppose each other. One has to move in a separate direction for there needs to be friction for iron to sharpen iron. So it's not a friendly exercise for iron to sharpen iron. You get what I'm saying? So now a lot of people are not comfortable with that. So I've always been comfortable with that friction. So I said, no, let's come. When they came in, I opened the door and debated with them, and with the Jehovah's Witnesses and what. So I remember mentioning getting into the story of Lazarus and the rich man, and then there was a bit of an argument of whether it was a parable or an actual story. So Jesus, when he tells the parable of the Good Samaritan, Christians don't have a hard time thinking that it's a myth. So the story of the Good Samaritan is a myth. Christians don't have a problem with that, but there is truth in the myth. That's why I'm saying a myth is not necessarily a lie. It's just a myth is a parable. It's a story created to tell a certain truth, to portray a certain truth. That is what the Bible is. It's a parable, a book of parables. That's
Okay.
what one wanted us to understand. And so all the fundamentals of the Bible, every character, like the main characters, your Cain, your Abel, your Esau, your Jacob, all those people are parable characters.
Okay.
They're not historical. The Exodus, the parable. There's never been That's why one of the things that will show you if you understand the Bible, this I learned when I was a Bible scholar, right? I understood that when the Bible says a certain woman, right, it's a parable, it's a metaphor, it speaks on various levels. A certain woman can even be linked, you can link the metaphor to the church as the bride. When it, or a certain man, you get what I'm saying? So the Bible's, one of the clues that the Exodus is actually a parable to you is the fact that the Bible does not mention any names of the Pharaoh. When we grew up in the church, we thought Pharaoh was a name of a person. But there's a reason why the Bible writers don't mention the name of the Pharaoh. Because it's a mythological story. If it was not, because it's a parable, it's a myth. The story was created, is not a historical account. If it was, they would have mentioned the Pharaoh's name, just like they did other characters. For example, Herod, when they say Caesar or something, he says given to Caesar. You know, who was the Caesar then? You know, it doesn't mention the name because it's a mythological. If the Pharaoh existed, do you know how many pharaohs lived in ruled the land of Kemet over the 3,000 years? Do you know how many of them? And they decided just to write, and there was a certain Pharaoh. And why would they write that when everybody in the world knew who that Pharaoh was? The Canaanites, when they wrote to the pharaohs in these Amana letters, they knew who they were writing to. They knew, they wrote the name of the Pharaoh, the Lord, the King. So that's one of the things.
Okay. Regarding the pharaohs, I was just checking here on my notes, but I think the pharaohs are listed, their names and their genealogy by the time when Egypt was there, they are listed in the book of Joshua, if I am not mistaken. As in which pharaoh was the son of this pharaoh. From the very first time a pharaoh was named a pharaoh, whereby the Egyptian kings were named pharaohs. It's mentioned in the book of Joshua. There's the story to why the first pharaoh was named a pharaoh is mentioned in the book of Joshua.
But what I mean is, it will not tell you which pharaoh the Exodus pharaoh is, because the Exodus. That's what I mean. It's not gonna tell you this pharaoh is the one who oppressed the children of Israel. It's not gonna give you that. There's a reason.
That's what.
It's not that it was a difficult thing to do. The reason is, the reason for that is because it's a myth. You can't name a pharaoh an actual pharaoh when you know the story is not true, because people will actually say, but that's a lie. Because during that pharaoh's time, because anything you say about any pharaoh can be verified in the records. So that's why a lot of these Egyptological Christians have been trying to speculate. Could it be Pharaoh Ramesu? You know, could it be this Pharaoh? No, that Pharaoh in Exodus, the whole Exodus is a myth. It's not historical.
So I'm sorry, I'm not really finding those, but if I do, I'll send them to you. But especially before the Exodus, the Pharaoh that was responsible for putting too much pressure on the Israelites and all that, holding them back, was a son. I forget his name, but the names are mentioned, especially their time in Egypt. The names are mentioned in the book of Joshua. You know, so you can check that as well. As I read, I remember they put a bit of genealogy, to the pharaohs. These up to the names. I remember there's another one was called in a certain name because apparently the people of the time thought he was ugly and too short, and got a name from that, from what they thought of him. I can remember correctly, right before they left Egypt. So in the book of Joshua, all that is mentioned. And then you have to understand, if you are saying you're coming from a Christian's point of view, as I said, I don't identify as a Christian, but you have to understand that on our side I call this a battle between the truth and the lie. And on our side of the writers, we have people that infiltrate, and I'm sure it's there as well. As you say, that there's some things that have been written about Egypt that are a total lie, So on our side as well, we have writers that infiltrate, the faith. For example, throughout Jesus' time, he always went against the Pharisees and the scribes. Those were the people who were in charge of keeping the law, but he was against them. The people that were in charge of the writings and the law, he was always against them. So that didn't end then, and that didn't start then. In terms of when Abraham lived, we have issues whereby the Greek Septuagint that copied from the Hebrew Bible, in Egypt, we have that book mentioning the people living 130 years before they can have a son. But past that stage, you come to the modern Hebrew, the translation from Greek to modern Hebrew. People are born when people are 30 years old, shortening the time, making Abraham look like he was his great grandfather. I don't know if it's Terah or died before him. In fact, Abraham died before him. All that needs to be taken into consideration. So when reading the Bible, we have to consider the fact that, as you are saying, that there are no Pharaoh names, and I'm saying there are Pharaoh names in another book that when you bring into the table, even Christians themselves would say that's not a Bible, that's not part of the Bible, But the Bible tells us for a matter to be established, you have to.
Which book mentions the act? No, we are not talking about Pharaoh names. We are talking about the Exodus Pharaoh specifically.
Yes,
that's the only Pharaoh
in the book,
who's important. The others are not important.
The book of Joshua. The book of Joshua. So reason why. Okay, let me see.
Who does it say? Who does it say oppressed the children of Israel?
Let me check it for you.
Okay. And while you are checking, I see we are running over to almost 2.5 hours. We should be ending the show so it doesn't go too long. And it's late. Gotta sleep.
That's true.
Flight in the morning. So yeah, it's at 10:30 where I am. So it's very late right now. So while you are searching that, I'll just quickly check out some comments.
1 second.
The comment section. Go through the comment section quickly. We have Theta 300 in our midst. Greetings, family. It says, Mthoe, the Ndebele man or woman should have shown you their flag. The falcon is a symbol from ancient Kemet, Meruneta, hieroglyphs, just to mention one. Absolutely. You can see the symbolism even in Inzalwelanga. We've got throughout the so-called stone circles area, you find these birds, and there is a linkage to that. And also we have 800 also mentioning that the spiritual symbols throughout Africa are aligned. So it is the culture. So is the culture to a great extent. That is very true. Anybody that has studied the cultures, because we must bear in mind that most people don't even know their own culture. they don't even know the difference between the bastardized, because what we see today is bastardized. Everything is bastardized. Lobola is bastardized. The British had a hand in what you call Lobola today. So how it became a bride price. I mean, if you don't know that history and what was before, how can you say you know your culture? So our people that know our culture is basically in ruins. If you want to understand the state of African culture, go and look at the state of our monuments, from Mapungubwe to Great Zimbabwe monuments to Nzalwelanga. They lie in ruins. They are not being used. They've been abandoned, you know, and they lie in skeletal forms right now. They're not even standing in their former glory. People visit them. So they are a place you visit once in a while. You know? It is the same as our African culture. People call the customs they engage in once in a blue moon. When they go home and they slaughter a goat, they call that culture. But culture is what you live every day. So that's why I'm saying African people really, in general, do not even know what their own culture is. And even in ancient times, the knowing of your culture, there were levels to that. There were elders that knew the culture more than the young ones. And then there were carriers of the wisdom traditions who knew the culture more than the general public of the population. So yes, if anybody is out here who has a question, or I've gone through the comments, and greetings to our Kebulan man over there, and Sanele. Yes, he's throwing some hieroglyphic signs. Sanele Klaraza. Yeah, he's out here. We see y'all fellas. Thank you for joining this discussion. It's been good. And so, Brother Mthoe, I think you've run out of time now. Are you finding anything? So
okay, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right.
the
yeah. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. But I don't
okay. So
see
the pharaoh that came after the pharaoh that was I didn't go back to the pharaoh that was friends with Joseph's name. I just had to look for the one that came after the one that knew Joseph. Yes, so I was going to take time. I'm not sure if it's the Exodus one, but it's the one that that started all the the treatment against the Israelites. So I'm not sure if it's the one that reigned all over, because I could have gone forward. Remember, I don't know where it is exactly, so I was trying to check through. So the one that I came across now is called Macron. Macron, he was the son of the Pharaoh. So a Pharaoh commanded Joseph before his death to be a father to his son Macron, and that Macron should be under the care of Joseph and his council. So all I know is throughout the book of Joshua, pharaohs are mentioned. Now, as you said, we are running out of time.
How do you spell
sorry?
Macron? How do you spell Macron?
M-A
Yeah.
G-R-O-N.
Who's Macron? Is it a pharaoh?
Is the pharaoh after the pharaoh that had put Joseph in charge.
Okay.
All right. So
but then there is no Macron in ancient Egypt.
Okay, 1 second.
When did he rule?
So it was on the 30th year. 30th year, the Israelites went to Egypt.
Okay.
Oh, so Macron is a English
What is
translation. Let me
Egyptian name?
try to see for the let me try to look for the original. Tales of Times Forgotten. This is where I'm getting it from. If you must put it in such an okay.
Okay. Anyway, so because of time, I think we need to end the show, right? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you've been asking me all the questions. I haven't asked you any. I only have one question. Close. And the question is, in all my 37 slides that I've presented, which one do you dispute?
And the ones you presented, okay. There is the one about the laws, the 42 laws.
Yes.
If you notice something about those laws, I think we need to understand the context. Who is writing? Who is he referring to? You know, because as you can see, the person says, "I have not done this. I have not done this." So, is the writer putting it
So
in his own words?
What is
Sorry?
the dispute? What is the dispute? Because remember,
So
that part of the presentation is me showing that the law, the Mosaic law, came after the ancient. Because here the whole debate is the concept of resurrection, the concept of immaculate conception, the Psalms and the Proverbs, the law, all of that originated in ancient Egypt. Judgment of the nation. You get what I'm saying?
So
where you need to dispute is that there is biblical law is actually not. It's actually older than the ancient Egyptian law.
Yes, reason why I brought that, the context. Reason why I brought the context of that writing, ne? It's because as Egypt was living, there were people living also. They had beliefs, maybe not written, but they had beliefs. You know, so when that was written, who was writing? Who was he referring to? Is there someone who's supposed to be saying those things? Who is it written to, and what is it used for? Is it a law, or is it a story of someone proving themselves righteous in front of other people? Because honestly speaking, for someone to say I didn't steal anything, stealing could have been a crime on other people even way before Egypt. You know, I have not slept with anyone's wife. And also, when you take note of what the pastor said last time, that all people should have had an understanding of who God is and his characteristics. Egyptians obviously are human beings like other human beings. We are all creations of one God. At some point, we all had an understanding and character of who God is and his characteristics. If you were to be called and said, you are being judged by God, if you were to prove yourself clean or righteous, you have to clean yourself from all the accusations. And coming from how those laws are put down, it doesn't sound like laws. It sounds like someone proving themselves, righteous. So that's why I'm saying the context of how those things are written.
Let me come in there. So before, you see, we need to understand African culture. This thing is not it's not only found in ancient Egypt. When you go to the Bakongo people, they also have let me do this for you. In South Africa during apartheid, right? There is a song where they said, I can't sing. I've been by a little bit. Senzeni na, senzeni na, senzeni na. You know, they're saying, what have we done? You get what I'm saying? Do you know where that concept comes from? Because Africans have a thing where they're like, okay, there's a calamity, or whether people might interpret apartheid as a punishment, or they're saying, what have we done? You get what I'm saying? So amongst the Bakongo, they also have confessions where they say, I have, because now here's what you need to understand. Before someone says Zenzeni na, there has to be something that comes before that. If you say you declare your innocence, it means prior to you declaring your innocence, you should have had something to inform you that what that
happening. Yes.
So,
yes.
So well, the 42 laws that I'm mentioning here, specifically the ones written, I didn't show the judgment when in ancient Kemet, when the priest passed, or rather in their tombs before they died, they would build their tombs prior to them passing on, and they would basically go through the judgment of their lives, how they lived, and they would have to state. It's just like when you go to court, they say, do you plead, before they bring about judgment, you plead.
Yeah.
Right? You plead, they ask you, do you plead innocent or guilty? They found that from us. You get what I'm saying? So now, before you say, is by the time you get to the court and say, I plead not guilty, that means there are many steps before that. There is a constitution, which you would have known.
There is a constitution, there is a law, yes.
Yes. So by the time you plead before the judge, what you're reading here, the 42 laws, most of these ones were written, we find them mostly in the tombs where they declare their innocence in the judgment. And this is before they declare their innocence before they get to the judge. That is the context. But the fundamental debate here is that this judgment, confession of innocence based on the laws, is older by 2,000 years than the Mosaic law. Because remember,
I agree with you.
Origins. So because remember, we must remember that is the Bible plagiarism of the great Bantu story? Did the Bible stories come from the Bantu? You get it? Because the fundamental question here is why, if you look at I'll even ask you a simple question. You know, the land of Canaan is closer to Africa, right? Right.
Is in Africa.
Okay, good. It's in Africa. Yeah, exactly. Now, have you ever asked yourself why the apostles, they did not come and evangelize in Africa, and they went and evangelized far and out? Have you ever asked yourself that? And yet, if indeed we were people without a God, they should have started right there now in their backyard. So the argument at the end of the day, from my perspective, the fundamental argument is against the idea that we were an ungodly people, and therefore we needed missionaries to come and preach to us. The fundamental argument I am putting out is that no one can say, in fact, that we needed a saving. We needed the Bible. We needed missionaries to come and give us Jesus. We did not need that. Why? Because all those concepts came from us. The oldest holy mountain in the world is in Sudan. It's called Jabal Bakar. I was there in January. I walked on that mountain. This is before there was Mount Zion and the Mount Sinai and whatever holy mountain. Before there was a pilgrimage to Mecca and Jerusalem, the whole world had a pilgrimage to Kemet. You get what I'm saying?
So
this
before
is
you close it, Nick, give me a last. Before you close it, give me a last point.
Yeah.
So I had to. There is truth that we didn't need saving, and the fact that we were made to look like we were godless. You know. So yes. So when it comes to that point,
why do we need the Bible if our culture is holy? Because
so
that's the fundamental basis of my argument. Is
so there are some things that we need to not cancel out. For example, Ranzo. For example, the Bible is our book. Ne? We just don't we don't align on some parts on how we think of it as our book, ne? But on the fact that it's our book, we together there. Now, in the Bible, there is a vision that was given to Daniel that was talking of worldly empires. That vision has came to life. You know, do you know about it? That it has came to life with the first the statue that had a golden head, with the head being Babylon, followed by Medo-Persia, followed by Greek, followed by the Romans, followed by the mixture of iron and clay, which was the Romans, and the fake church, you know, that had 10 toes that were the 10 tribes that came from Rome and became the Germans, the Saxons, the what, the Vinde what, ne? Followed by one horn coming out and destroying other three, which is the papas that came out and destroyed other three tribes of the European, tribes. So all that was a vision that was given to Daniel that came into a reality.
Okay,
you know.
Sorry to cut you there, but I don't want to get into people's interpretation of the Bible and stuff like that. I wanna.
No, it's a prophecy. It's a prophecy.
No, let me tell you why. Like,
yeah,
someone might not see that as a prophecy as such. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a very debate, even amongst Christians themselves. I mean, I grew up in the church. There was once upon a time even people said that the barcode 666 is a barcode. There's various things people will say that who's this becoming president it was prophesied in the Bible, or certain events that are happening. People would try and link it to this and that. You get what I'm saying? So I don't want to get into all of it, but I want to make you understand why the Bible might, even though it may have been written by Black people, the reason why okay, at the end of the day, I don't follow this thing where something just because it's Black, it doesn't mean it's good for us, because you must understand that everything you must do with an intention and an objective at the end of the day. So you said earlier, now I remember that you said that you went to ancient Egypt and now what? You get what I'm saying? What are you gonna what and stuff like that. But what you will find is that every ancient Egypt, Kush, and all these civilizations are what give us the technology. You see, now we are talking, we are thousands of kilometers apart, to different time zones, and we are speaking here. This is all because of the African culture, not of the pastoral Normans. This is of the culture which the Bible demonizes. Do you know that, for example, the reason why Africans are not being given credit for the computer which we invented? Do you know that the language of the computer, in fact, this book here in front of me, The African Fractals, Modern Computing and Indigenous Design. This book is a very complex book. Someone really needs to be quite mathematical to understand. It's all about how African divination systems are the basis of the computer language. The binary codes come from the divination system. As a Christian, if you are a Christian, automatically the divination, the people who set up the computer, they had to go and do you know how many people Europeans secretly go and sit and learn from African divination systems? They creep into the villages. They don't go to people that live in the city in this thing called ethnography. They go to people who have isolated themselves and still carry out these traditions. So pastoral nomadism, the Bible represents pastoral nomads. Pastoral nomads have never my objective, let me show you what, as an African, my objective is for Africans to go back to a place where we become world leaders. We need to become city builders. Like who? You know who are the city builders? Like Cain, like Nimrod. Not like Abel and Jacob. Jacob has never built a city. Abel never built a city. Cain built a city. Nimrod built a city. You get what I'm saying? Because every culture carries a spirit. So if I'm gonna have the spirit of Jacob, let's say just because let's say Jacob, for argument's sake, is black, and now we wanna be like Jacob. Basically, you wanna say now you wanna be a pastoral nomad. That's how I went. When I studied civil engineering, there was a guy that I studied in school with. I bumped into him years later in Sunnyside. This guy was a missionary. He was walking around with a backpack, and he says he's a missionary now. That guy said, we don't know where we're going to sleep, what we're going to eat, God provides. That is the spirit of the pastoral nomad. It says, the birds of the air neither sow nor reap or gather into barns, but the Lord provides for them. So even when Jesus said to the rich young man, if I want to be perfect, so he said to himself, everything that you have and follow me. So that is the spirit of pastoral nomadism. And that is what we desire as Africans. We want to be in the forefront because everybody's benefiting from our culture, which we demonize. Because at the end of the day, fundamentally, the people who rule the world, everywhere in all history, everywhere people that rule the world are people who deify and glorify their culture. And the ones who are always subjugated are people who demonize their culture. Everything you see out there was not created by pastoral nomads. It was created by the stuff that we demonize, the divination systems. The pharaohs are the people who build everything. When you go to the most powerful nation in the world, they copy the blueprint from where? From the pharaohs. You get what I'm saying? They come to they don't go to pastoral nomads. Pastoral nomads have not evolved. They are still doing the same stuff they were doing 5,000 years ago. They keep sheep and cattle. There's nothing, but the people who have developed and evolved to high dynamics are the farmers, because the farmers create a need. How you have metallurgy and the creating of iron, it came from the farmer, because digging into the ground, you needed iron metals to make it easier than using stone tools. That's how the necessity, that's how technology came about to be. It is not the pastoral nomads. Shepherds have never created anything. So if we as an African people want to be in the forefront of invention, as we are the original inventors, if any problems that we want to solve, remember even in the Bible, the people, when the Israelites how did they end up in ancient Egypt? They had a problem. I think there's a sound coming. Is it your mic? Okay, let me mute you just a bit. When you how did in the mythology or in the parable, how did the Israelites end up in Egypt? They had a problem. They did not say we're going on holiday. They went to Egypt to solve their problems. You get what I'm saying? No one goes to the pastoral nomad. Throughout the Bible, the pastoral nomad always end up in, they went where? To the Canaanites. The Canaanites were not pastoral nomads. The Canaanites were settlers. They went to the Canaanites. The language, the Hebrew language is a Canaanite language. Even the Bible says so. You get what I'm saying? So the people who solve problems, the problems of the world and make the world a better place are not pastoral nomads. In fact, pastoral nomads are problematic because what they do when they spend time all day, you can go and we still have many pastoral nomads. The most troublesome people in Africa, like the Fulani people, you know, these Boko Haram people and all. These guys are pastoral nomads. They are brutal. They would, because they don't do much. They spend time just fighting, and then they go and invade a village and take the cattle of the other people, you know. So they go to Nigeria and find out how the Fulani are so problematic. But of course, even amongst the pastoral nomads, there is a bit of things that we can learn that are good. So we can take, if I am to, I'm not saying I reject pastoral nomadism in completion. If I would give just a rough ratio, I would take probably maybe 75% from the farmers and 25% from the pastoral nomads. There are many things that we can draw from the Bible as African people, but we can never benefit from the Bible if we take it literally and we think and because quite frankly, at the end of the day, it's the Bible that says you shouldn't do a lot of the things that are part of our culture. You get what I'm saying? Mediums. It says you get what I'm saying. It's against Babylon. It's against.
So on that part, Ranza, I noticed something. Yeah. Something we call Ubuntu. Something we call Ubuntu aligns with those 10 laws. Before we start adding other laws, it aligns with those 10 laws.
Where does Ubuntu come from? It does not come from Jacob.
It does not come from what?
It doesn't come from Jacob.
You said it does not come from Jacob.
Yes. So when I say Jacob, I'm talking about Jacob is a spirit of pastoral nomadism and the biblical scriptures. The Ubuntu, Jacob is the opposite of Ubuntu, because as Ubuntu now, if you are in you in, let's say you were still new in, you live in SA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or okay, let's say you just crossed the border and you still new in, and I'm like, oh, so this guy is stranded. Yeah, and you need help. I'm like, yeah, man. Your wife is very nice, bro. So you need a place to stay. Just give me your wife, bro. You know, give me your wife, and then I'll give you guys a place to stay and some food. Would you call that Ubuntu? That's exactly what Jacob is. The word Jacob means supplanter.
That's not Ubuntu.
Wait, yeah, exactly. So what did Jacob say to? Jacob represents his name means supplanter. He went to his brother. His brother was hungry. If he had Ubuntu, he would have said, my brother, do not worry. You are my flesh and blood. Here is food. Let's eat. But no, he said, haha, I got you where I want you. First, give me your birthright. That's equivalent to me saying, hey, brah, you are stranded. Just give me your wife, brah. Just for the night. I'll give her back. You know what I'm saying? That is the spirit of Jacob. And we see it. And if you look today in the African, in our community, who is committing the spirit of Jacob against other Africans. When today, when you go to when someone wants a job, and a guy says to the lady, "Sleep with me first." Who is doing that? It's not the white guy, mostly. It's their own fellow black people. In fact, in SA, we hear that people, when they're looking for jobs, their own black people are telling them, "Give me some money and I'll get you a job." How do you ask someone to pay your job? This empowerment programs that they have in SA, you can't get any funding because the comrades will tell you, give us 10% and give us this and that of your business. They basically want to take your whole business before they can give you anything. So that spirit, it comes from the spirit of Jacob. It is not Ubuntu. Africans today do not practice Ubuntu. They practice Jacob because of the spirit of Christianity. And that is why Africans cannot continue. Like this thing, it's not even the person holding Africans back is no longer the white man. It's the spirit of Jacob inside of us. Because we, instead of working together and helping each other, like Nigerians do, when a Nigerian comes, I've lived with Nigerians, when a new Nigerian comes into the neighborhood, they take him in, he has nothing, and they give him place to sleep and everything. That is Ubuntu. Probably I can say those Nigerians are practicing Ubuntu. But most of us in general are not. We are practicing Jacob.
I would say I have an explanation to why it's happening like that. Ubuntu is not a definition of one act. Ubuntu is a definition of a series of acts that are positive, not just one act. So I'm saying that to add on the Jacob story. It doesn't wait for one act. No, it's a series. Then regarding to the reason why Nigerians do what they do and we don't, you have to understand that the Southern African or the Southern Africa side has lived a lot longer than Nigerians did with a foreign person. The ideologies, the way of lives that we have adopted, that we are trying to deal with right now, Nigerians stopped dealing with them in 1960. They haven't. If you speak of Nigerians, I'll tell you about Ethiopians as well. Ethiopians, they do the same thing you are saying. In Nigeria, I've had clients that are Nigerians that would jump online and they see white people, they pass up until they find my company. They're like, "We want to work with you." These guys are people who have had a lot of time with themselves to know themselves better and how to treat themselves better. You can't love yourself if you don't know yourself. Us on our side, our ways of lives, this life of individualism whereby I care about myself. Right now, we've got an example. We've got this thing of savings whereby I would rather save than to help a brother. This is something that gets marketed to us on a daily basis on our screens because we have lived a lot longer, like we have lived for a long time with someone that doesn't belong to us. And while we've been living with those people, they have been running what we take as information. I heard someone say they call it information because when it comes in, it forms. Whatever comes out, the formation of whatever comes out based on the ins that you've been taking. Take, for example, marketing in South Africa. Who runs that? Some of us are doing, media. You can never find a black person who jumps into marketing on their own. They have to be assistants or just, helpers of the guys. The media, the market adverts. There is no black company that's responsible for any advert, or let me say big adverts. They have to be helpers or an extra company. So the person who runs marketing and the advertising industry is a person who doesn't know how we work and probably doesn't care and is not trying to preach that or get that kind of information out there. He has his own way of life and that's what he's going to push forward, So I like to be easy, especially on the Southern African guys, because Zim is better compared to South Africa. And when you look at it, Zim kind of got its independence before South Africa, but we are not fully better than South Africa when it comes to working together as black people. But Nigerians are leading, Ethiopians are leading. We can't match them, So I believe when it comes to that part of Ubuntu disappearing from us, it's because we have lived with people that are not part of us, but have been leading in terms of the things we consume, up until we are now a reflection of what they've been teaching us, So we are fighting that already mentally, So it's not wise to blame it on. It's just that when you say Christian, I'm dragged to Christianity. Christianity on its own, it's a bomb. It's a bomb on its own. To be honest, it's a bomb. It's a time bomb.
Yeah. Okay. So So basically, less than 5 minutes. We should just close now. So I want to shy away from the idea of blaming white people for us not having Ubuntu, because as a matter of fact, white people conquered Africa because of us abandoning Ubuntu. I've done extensive, comprehensive explanations on that to show that you cannot show me that Europeans could not conquer Africans on the battlefield. In fact, I had my first debate on Twitter. The debate lasted 5 minutes anyway, and then the rest was just me breaking down the whole thing. The Africans, you cannot show me the battles where Europeans have claimed victory over us. You know what I'm saying? What actually happened is one brother selling out another. That is where, which tells me that Ubuntu, because like I can give you examples from North Africa all the way to Southern Africa, but I'll just give one example here. That there was one of the most underrated kings in Southern Africa is King Sekhukhune of Bapedi. King Sekhukhune fought with the Dutch. They couldn't defeat him. The British collaborated with the Dutch, and he still beat them. Do you know how they eventually managed to kill him? In fact, when he died, they released a newspaper where they said one of our worst and most powerful enemies has passed on. This guy, Sekhukhune, it's not fair, like his name is known among South Africans, but he's not really famous, and we know the propaganda behind it. I have never even seen Sekhukhune Street. And according to me, there should be the King's Sekhukhune Street in Polokwane, all these places, This man, for them to defeat him, they had to use his brother Mampuru and other people. So he had to face the Dutch army, the British army, Sekhukhune and his men, and a group of other Swati people. It was a huge army. That's how they basically defeated him. There is no European army on its own that defeated. That's why the only one which is basically out of luck is when the Boers defeated the Zulus. But this was it was a rematch, because the Zulus whooped them in the first match, and then they did a rematch. In the rematch, the Zulu king became arrogant, and he allowed a war where the Dutch were on the other side of the river. How do you allow your soldiers to swim, to go and stab someone who has a gun? Swim with a spear to come and stab. That was a lucky war. That's why it is the only, and until today, they've been celebrating that victory for over 200 years. How do you celebrate a victory where you shot someone who was swimming with a spear coming to stab you? Not to throw a spear. Remember, Shaka had discontinued the throwing of the spear, and the Dutch still celebrate that. Why would they celebrate defeating just the Zulu? So people have this idea that these people have power over us because of guns. No, We were never defeated in the battlefield. And when I had that debate with that brother, I said, look, name those battles. Name them. And even when the French fought against the Dahomey army, that female army that a lot of people, I think, came to know about with the Woman King movie, when you look at even their history, the French used Senegalese soldiers to defeat those women of the Dahomey of Benin, you know. So these people we've always been forced to be reckoned with. Even when the Arabs invaded Sudan, they tried once and they came back, they ran back and said, they gave the Sudanese a name. It's something about eye destroyer, because they would shoot the bull right to the center of your eye. So we were undefeated. There is even a text that I was reading. It's called the Horses of Cush. The Assyrians, who were one of the most feared armies in antiquity, they used the horses of Cush. The ancient Egyptians used the Cushite army. The Assyrians used Cushite armies. The Arabs used African people. When they did the Umayyad conquest, they used black people. So we were, from antiquity throughout, we were untouchable, bro. There's Queen Zing, there's endless examples. But when you look at those and you ask yourself, so how the hell did the Europeans actually take Africa? It was one selling another. Even when Zimbabwe, Changamira Dombo, he whooped those guys. One man with no extra, he whooped the Portuguese, you know. Even the Mutapa, when the Portuguese lived in Mutapa, they lived like subjects. They would not go, they needed permission to go into the city of Mutapa. Permission from the king. So which means they would need a permit prior to traveling. You would have to apply for the permit first. And when he went to the city, he was not allowed to bring his rifle. And they lived like that. Succession disputes in African kingdoms was the entry point for Europeans, because when you had a dispute with your brother, like they had recently in the Zulu kingdom with Mrs. Zulu and Smagate, that's when the Europeans come in. They say, this is the moment we've always needed. And that's where, and remember, I don't want to really bring in that politics into this. We know that some people were talking about going to court to dispute the kingship. What does that mean? Where did they learn that from? Why do you go to the white man to dispute? So in ancient times, what they used to do is, you and your brother are disputing the throne. One of you would go to the French and say, be my allies, you've got guns. Then the French would say, oh, the Lord has answered our prayer. Finally. Do you know how long the Portuguese waited patiently for Mutapa? They lived for years waiting for that moment. So we lost Africa through abandoning Ubuntu. And people tend to speak of history because they don't really study. They think, we lost because of Ubuntu. We allowed everyone. No, nonsense. Ubuntu has never been, it's the opposite of weakness, in fact. Ubuntu requires justice. You know, it's actually another subject for another day, that Ubuntu is not softness. Ubuntu is justice. And justice says, if you do something, there must be a balancing of the scale. There must be reckoning against what you've done. That is what Ubuntu is. You get what I'm saying? So if we are going to embrace Ubuntu, which side are we going to do? Osiris or Seth? It has to be Osiris. Are we going to do Esau or Jacob? It has to be Esau. Are we going to do Abel or Cain? We have to do Cain. You know, if we want if we want to be builders of cities, if we want to be builders of cities, we can't be Abels. We have to be Nimrods. We have to be Cains. So it's a question. You have to decide what do you want as an objective. Do you want your descendants to be builders of cities, or to go and live like the children of Israel went to the sanctuary of the farmers, because the farmers are the ones who build sanctuaries for when there's a famine coming. You know? So you can decide. It's basically, for me, that's why I say I am not 100% rejecting pastoral nomads. There are positive things that you can learn from them. They are good principles about the training of manhood that you find. Because pastoral nomadism is a rough life. It's not an easy life. Imagine with these floods, you are living in a tent. Not in a palace, because they don't build. Why would you build a palace if after 2 months you're gonna leave with your cattle? So there are good things that we can learn from pastoral nomadism, but my beef with the Bible and pastoral nomads is the whole concept of demonizing the most important part of our culture, which is the building of cities and statues and everything, all of that. The iron makers.
But where is the building of cities demonized?
In biblical mythology, name one person that is glorified, that is not who was a builder of a city. Everyone who's rejected in the Bible, the first person who's rejected is Cain. He was a builder of a city. Nimrod was a city builder. He in fact, a builder of civilization. The people who were chosen, hold on, and who else? Like the people. Remember, the people who are chosen by Yahweh Shai are shepherds. Shepherds don't build cities. You get what I'm? Okay, why? Remember, a shepherd lives in a tent. They live in a temporal accommodation. Why would you build a city? Why would Jesus say, "Sell everything you have and follow me"? Why? What? Where does that come from? I'll give you another example of even in the New Testament that a farmer is demonized. There's a farmer who says, "Look, my crops have grown. Let me build a big storage and store my goods and sit back and enjoy the fruit of my labor." And it's full. Your soul shall be taken from you this day. Whose things shall not speak. But I know people want to bring interpretations and all that. But the fact is, that guy falls under the farmers. And if you look, you don't have a builder. You can't be a builder if you're not a son of a farmer. If you're not a farmer yourself. Because if you build a city, what the hell are you going to eat? If let's say now the grazing land has been overused, you have to move. Whose city will that be? That's why they never build cities.
I got one last thing to ask. I got one last thing to ask, maybe just a few minutes, but let's do it this way. 1 minute, or even lesser if we are to throw a few points there before we close it up, if it's okay with you. Yeah. So on the demonization side, what I've came to understand about the Bible is it stands with no culture, it stands with no race. There's a lot of things that I'll be checking my minute there. There's a lot of things that Romans do or Greeks do, or all the races on this earth do that contradict, the Bible's values. But if you look at our lives, Africans' way of lives, it aligns with biblical values a lot more than any race in this world. We can live in a house, 20 people. You will find that in the Bible, whereby a house is, there's a cousin, there's what people are living together, they're taking care of each other. That exists in our culture, and it's not demonized in the Bible. But if you look at other races, they go against that. In Ndebele, there's a saying, "Uwanda waliwa ngabatakat." We are the only people that don't have a problem with having a lot of children, but it's demonized now, but the Bible doesn't demonize it. I think my minute is up.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to...
Okay, so the demonization has nothing to do with the race. Like I said, you not find in the Bible where original farmers in throughout the Bible, the people, the Bible says it's against Cush. It says, ye Ethiopians in the book of Zephaniah also shall be slain by my sword. It's against the ancient Egyptians. These people are farmers. The Cushite, Nimrod was a city builder. Cain, who is Osiris in ancient Egypt, was a city builder. These are farmers. People who are farmers, they give birth to metallurgists, iron makers, to sculptors. And the Bible says we shall not make sculptures. So when you say that that we align to the Bible, it's a contradiction because the Bible doesn't like ancient Egyptians and Cushites. It's against these groups. It basically how the idea of Egypt being the land of bondage comes from the Bible. That is why I cannot. That's why I cannot subscribe to it. I will subscribe to the Bible if I not have that, because it's the most important part. How would you say that?
I think you passed your minute. You passed your minute. You passed your minute. So I want us to progress now. Then in terms of I started at 40. Yeah. In terms of the sculptures, the Bible doesn't condemn the making of iron making or blacksmith, because the tribe of Judah was known for archery. You know, it was taught for, I think it's the sword or archery, between the two. You know, that couldn't have existed if it was against the handiwork. That's one. Two, the making of sculptures, the God of the Bible is against people making an image of him, you know, which Egypt was mostly, it was images, you know, imagery of who God is. So the God of the Bible is against having graven images, by graven as in on the stones, images of himself or anything that's in heaven, you know. So yeah, I think I'll end it.
Anything, yeah. No. The archers and all that. Archers doesn't mean it's made of stone. I mean of iron and all that. But anyway, the fundamental point is that in closing, if you look at throughout our history, right, the fall of our civilizations everywhere in Africa, starting in African Christians' favorite place, Ethiopia. The fall of civilization is ushered in by the Bible. As soon as the Bible comes in, that becomes the end of civilization. The people stop building, the people stop developing. There is a decline. It's a concept everywhere. You can name any country, there is no country. And now today, when you travel throughout Africa, where people are Muslims or Christians, that's where you find the poorest people. And the more churches you find, and the more religious the people are, the more poorer they are. The more that people go to church 4 times a week, the poorer they are. When you go to places where people are building and developing, the less they go to church, the less they subscribe to the Bible or take it literally. They are very mild about the Bible. So there is a trend to show that everywhere there's a fall of, where there's a decline of development in Africa, the Bible comes in.
Okay, so when was Egypt conquered?
Well, that's relative. Egypt was conquered in various places and they came back. Now, that's a very good question, because the ancient Egypt, when it was conquered, every time it bounced back, except when Christianity came in. Even Kush, Sudan, whenever they were conquered, Sudan was hardly conquered by outsiders, probably maybe by Egypt. But after Christianity came in, they never bounced back. Did I answer your question, man? Okay, looks like you were cut off, but anyway, wow, it's very late. I must sleep. So I'm just gonna read the last comments here. I just got here, guys, and now you're about to close. Yeah, fortunately, you.
I guess.
You were able to come in, and then we've got a comment from Sanele, Real Bantu, Ubuntu is physical and realize definition of what Bantu is. You are correct. So you do not practice Ubuntu. That's a fact. Ubuntu died with the introduction of the Bible in Africa. So whether it's Ethiopia, whether it's Egypt, because the closing down of the last temple in Egypt, which is the temple at Philae in Aswan, was done to bring in the Bible. So history, anyone that studies history all the way throughout Africa, that's why Ethiopia, you'll notice that the last development, the greatest buildings, the last greatest buildings are the actual churches, the last ones, the 4th century churches of Ethiopia, which were built by the people who were already builders when they were following their culture. So when they accepted Christianity, they built those churches. But after that, nothing is built. Nothing of value. There's a complete decline and there's never a bounce back. It's a trend, and the trend says something. You can't have a common trend everywhere, and there is no story there. If a person dates, marries 5 women, and then that person gets divorced 5 times, we look at them as the common denominator. And the common denominator in the fall of African civilizations is the Bible and the Quran. Before that, that's why the greatest, everywhere you go, in Africa, the greatest achievements by Africans came before the introduction of the Bible. Anyway, name any country, great Zimbabwe. You can go to Zimbabwe, you won't find anything greater than what was built before the introduction of the Bible. Check when Christianity or the Bible was introduced to Zimbabwe, and check if there's anything that was achieved greater than what was built before. There is nothing. South Africa, Egypt, Kush, Ethiopia, Sudan, West Africa, and Ghana, when in all these places where they introduced Islam, nothing was built that is greater than what was built before the introduction of that religion. And today, when I travel throughout Africa, I was in Sudan, you can see the poverty that Islam, it looks like Pakistan. It's like that poverty looks identical to the one I see in Pakistan, you know. So you can see the spirit, you know, because it's not a coincidence, because the Bible does not represent building. And for you to not have, because economic, if you're gonna talk about economic empowerment, people who build economies are not shepherds. There's no shepherd who has ever built an economy. For you to build a pyramid, you have to have such a massive economic achievement. You have to have a lot of money or a lot of resources, let me put it like that, to be able to build a pyramid. You get what I'm saying? And people like to talk about Mensa Musa and say, guys, the richest ever, and he was a Muslim. But when you check, Mensa Musa represents the early generations that accepted Islam. And now, what did he do with that wealth? He went and gave it away, went to Mecca. And what do the descendants of Mensa Musa, who are they? No one knows who they are. Who are the descendants of You go everywhere. It's a decline, bro. It's a trend. You can give me any country as an example. I'll give you the trend that you will not find any everywhere where you go. If you want to go and see, because I travel to see the great monuments that our civilizations have built, and the greatest of all are the ones that were built before the Bible was introduced to those people or were built prior. Even in Sudan, all the way that I went, it was the Meroe pyramids. The Meroe pyramids are amazing because they were blown up with dynamite by an Italian, but they still look amazing until today. The last buildings that you find is the Christian church when after Ethiopia invaded Sudan and turned them into Christianity, then later they became Muslims. There's nothing after that. There is no structure that you're going to see in Sudan. But there are multiple places you can go and find and see. I spent 6 days and I've seen every day I was moving from one side to another. And I captured so much amazing sites that I've seen. And all of them are prior to Christianity, except Old Dongola in Sudan. And Old Dongola is the end of development amongst the Sudanese. And today they live very poor because, quite frankly, they have taken on a culture of pastoral nomads. Pastoral nomadism does not build cities, does not build civilizations. Computers are from divination systems. If anyone who says they subscribe to Yahweh Shai, Yahuwah of the Bible, and they say they can embrace divination systems, I'd like to see that person, because divination systems are at war with the Bible. And that is, and today we are having, right now, we're using divination systems to be able to have technology today. The phones, computers, they speak a African divination language. You get what I'm saying? So that is where the danger is. And and myself in this journey, I found that there are things I would not have, I would have rejected due to my Christian walk. You get what I'm saying? Most Christians will not go to Egypt. You know, and when you going to Egypt is not just about, oh wow, lovely, we did this, okay, that's nice. There are many things. If people will not even realize that even there's so much Europeans took medical prescriptions from Egypt, and they are being used today. Medical tools, medical instruments that are being used today, they are on the walls of ancient Egypt. So technology as we know it today, everything that we enjoy that makes our lives easier and progressive, it does not come from shepherds. It comes from divinations systems. The people who are in divination, the demonic stuff.
Can we also point to all the aspects of our lives that are pushing us backwards? Because as we are speaking right now, we are governing ourselves in a foreign manner. You know, we are governing Africans, all Africans. We are governing ourselves in a way that we adopted. And when we, like, soon after fighting for our independence, there was no time of sitting down and thinking, who are we? Before all this, that remember what we fought for is not what we lost. You know, what Zimbabwe was fighting for our Zimbabwe, we didn't lose any Zimbabwe, you know, because there was no Zimbabwe to begin with. South Africa didn't lose South Africa, but we fought for South Africa, you know. And in the process, we fought for governing ourselves in a foreign manner. You know, I was shocked to find out that in my country, women are not allowed to help each other give birth. They will be arrested. You know, so there's a lot of aspects that are a bit playing a undercover role in us not knowing ourselves. We can sometimes I even think the fact that if there is any way, of which I believe so honestly, that a part of us are yes, you might say they are not they don't help in civilization, right? They were backwards in terms of civilization, but a part of us Africans are the Hebrew. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, a part of us are the Hebrews, and we have not came out to identify and claim that identity. Some are coming out and identifying, as the people from Egypt, the pure ones. But what have they taken there and implemented? The Egyptians were writing in coffins. They writings that they were putting there based on their beliefs because of the resurrection and all that. Are we doing that? We're not doing that. On the other side, the Hebrews had some laws to stick to or live by for them to make sure wherever they go, they conquer, but they have to stick to those rules. If no African can identify as that, it means there's a number of people that are not clinging to their self, to their old self. The fact that, for example, as I said, that Canaan is in Africa, if that fact is hidden, then it means there's a group of people that, again, that don't know themselves because they are in Africa, but they think Canaan is in. If you are truly a Canaanite and you're in Africa and you believe Canaan is in Middle East, how can you ever be yourself? If you think you don't even get how you got to Africa, but you're saying I'm African, I'm going back to my ways. You don't even know you are in the land that that says who you are. That information is hidden. Then how do you get to identify with who you really are? For example, no people right now can trace their origins to Kush. Like people are just stuck in the. You can just jump and say, we were Kushites." At least in America, there are people that are now doing DNA tests to know where exactly they come from.
Yeah. Okay. So, in terms of, you must remember, I can't hear you anymore.
Government. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was saying here in Africa, we undermine those little things that are influencing how we think and how we function. If we can't, for example, if we can't use herbs in hospitals that are taking care of more black people than it takes care of white people because they hire their own doctors. If public hospitals can't use herbs, and if you go to a herbalist and you go to a doctor or a nurse, they might even disregard you and say it's your fault that you are sick. And then biblically, I find a verse that says, along the rivers, I will put trees that you should use for eating and for herbs and medicine, biblically. So I can throw away the Bible, but at the same time, there are some aspects of it that aligns with who I am, than the government aligns with who I am.
Yeah. Like you see, the thing is, the Bible, like I said, there are many. If someone does not interpret it literally, there are some good things that you can find, but the Hebrew culture is more destructive to Africans than basically if Africans were to, there are many Africans who say for example, African Americans, if I say now I'm Hebrew, and the Bible is my culture, if I follow my culture, that divides is not gonna unite Africans. It's you're gonna say no, but because the Bible separates, it says there's Shem and Ham, and there are many African Americans who Hebrew Israelite, ISUPK, those guys. Those guys, I remember there was I saw a video, a Zulu guy was in the United States, saw them preaching, and he hollered at them and said, hey, yeah, these are my people. And they told him, no, you Zulu? And he's like, yeah. They're like, no, this ain't your people. You're, according to the Bible, you're Hamite. We are a separate people. You get what I'm saying? So it's not gonna bring any fruits. The Bible has not brought any good to Africa. We've we've done the greatest things ever in the world without the Bible. So I think if anyone wants to do great things, you must go and look at the blueprint. The Bible was not involved in building the Great Pyramids. It was not involved in building the Kingdom of Axum. It was not involved in building the Meroe Kingdom, all these great kingdoms. In fact, it was instrumental in destroying them. So I know someone can, I think for me, looking at this whole idea of what the Bible might be good for you is like Helen Zill's argument that colonization brought about improvement to Africa, you know. So, and the whole thing of DNA test and other thing, that the whole thing of history and identifying with DNA is not going to tell you much about who you are. It's only going to tell you a segment of it, because we've been, as human beings, we've been around for millions of years, and the Bible doesn't account for that. The story of Adam itself robs you of 40,000 years of history. That is the fundamental problem I have. Because if you're going to come to me with this Hebrew story, you're saying that human beings have only been around for about 6,000 years. So you are sacrificing the rest of the culture for the Bible. All right. I just got a message for Brother Mthoe. His battery is out. So yes, oh yeah, we've run the show way too long. I wanted to end it at 2 hours max. So let me read the last comment and let's go to sleep. Oh yeah, I did go through that. So thank you everybody for watching. Do like, share the video with everybody in your world, and if you have not subscribed to the channel, press the subscribe button and press that notification. Until next time, peace and African